watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am here on episode 22 of the podcast, getting deeper and deeper into Christopher Nolan's filmography as we cover this great household name director, Christopher Nolan. And yeah, we're talking about The Dark Knight today. The penultimate Christopher Nolan film, I think. I don't know. You could argue. I think it's between this and Inception, but you know, who? I think it's just personal preference. But yeah, definitely is most successful. So I'm excited to talk about this one, and I brought in a good friend today to talk about it with me, Houston Dragna. Houston, I'm excited to have you on to talk about this movie. I think I texted you when I asked you to do it, and I said whenever I think about The Dark Knight, I think about Houston because of your love for this movie, and so yeah, I had to get Houston on for this episode. Yeah, Houston, if you want to introduce yourself and kind of let everyone know who you are, what you do, that sort of thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, man. Yeah, it was awesome to get a text from you and say hey, I've been doing this podcast thing. I kind of been following you for a bit, so thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
But yeah, my name is Houston Dragna. I've been knowing Eli for I don't know what, probably close to 10 years now.
Yeah, close to it.
Jeez. Okay. Yeah, I need to check myself. I'm 31 now. That's just somewhere in the middle of college is when we met.
Yeah.
We started at a church together where I was the worship leader and Eli was the associate pastor, and then we knew each other from the Baptist Collegiate Ministry. I think you see him wearing the hat right now from UL in Lafayette. I am a native of Louisiana. I am married almost 10 years to my wife, Kristen. We have a little girl named Josephine. We have another little girl on the way in December, so that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I am currently working as a graphic designer, photographer, and videographer for a very small marketing firm in Baton Rouge. But I did used to work for PreSonus Audio and then for a short time Fender when we got bought out by them. And I did everything from social media to photography to kind of co-directing and producing some commercials and video shoots for different products and stuff like that. I've done the odd music video, live recording thing here and there, either from an audio perspective, I went to school for audio production and then kind of did that for a while with PreSonus, and then picked up videography soon after. And so I've done a little bit of that. And yeah, I play music myself, so I'm a guitar player. I sang a little bit, pretty much anything besides piano. I did brass and stuff in college. Yeah, I'm kind of going all over the place, but that's me in a nutshell. Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah,
for sure. Houston is the man of many talents, and most of the time you're like I'm a what's the phrase?
The jack of all trades, master of none.
Master of none. Yeah, but Houston's pretty. He's like the jack of all trades, but maybe not master, but higher than Jack. I'm
heckin' decent at most.
Oh man, but yeah, Houston's even done some pictures of my family that I love. So
yeah. Thank you, man.
Yeah, and you had I know y'all haven't put out anything in recent months, but you had a podcast with some friends going for a while. Too.
It's called Dad Casual. It is a kind of a chill video game podcast. we call it Dad Casual because it's a bunch of dads and we're all like quote unquote casual gamers. So we started that about a year ago. We put about, I don't know, I think we were getting close to 50 episodes or so. Maybe, I think it was in like the low 40s maybe. But I mean, all three of us are videographers to some degree. And the other two guys own a wedding business and I own my own wedding business. So like if you go to my website, like right now, it's just like all wedding centered. Yeah. But I do like a lot of like I was saying, product stuff and commercial work and contract labor and all this kind of stuff. Anything from family portraits to kind of whatever comes my way. So we all kind of got busy with booking and like the way that we run the production, it's like maybe a little bit too much for what we kind of overcommitted a little bit. So I think we're just taking like a little bit of a break right now, but it's a ton of fun. So if you want to go check it out, it's Dad Casual or Dad Casual Podcast, pretty much on any service.
Yeah, the content's still out there, even if there's nothing.
We have hours and hours and hours and hours of content. So if you like video games, and especially if you're a dad, it'll cater right to you.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a fun little niche, video game dads. But Houston, you want to share a little bit about like just remembering like what made you start like loving film? Maybe it was like childhood memories or like college or whatever. Share a little bit about that.
So I guess like my earliest memories would be Disney movies because my family was like super into Disney. Like I never went on a ski trip. Like I went on very few like road trips and stuff, but like every other year, I'm not trying to like brag or anything. Like I'm very like conscious of the fact that like not everybody gets to do this, but like every other year we would go to Disney World with like friends and family and all that kind of stuff. And so that was a big part of me growing up. And that was kind of a part of my family's identity for a while. And so we owned pretty much anything Disney animated feature films wise on VHS and then DVD and then Blu-ray in my house. And so there's like bookshelves full of it, like 4 of those at my house, probably still full of like old, mostly Disney movies. And so like Aladdin, Hercules, Mulan, those are some of my favorites. The ones that came out in like the early to mid 90s. So those are my fondest, still some of my fondest movie memories and some of my favorite movies to this day. I don't know about like modern, I guess like proper cinematography, which I mean, Disney has, I think they make great stuff, like I said, but I don't really know when or who it clicked with or what movie it may have been. If there was even one, it was probably just a series of a bunch of them. Right. But I don't think I'm as much of a cinema buff as you are. Sure. But I mean, obviously I love cinematography. I love photography. I have a really strong respect for great cinematographers and movie directors and writers and producers and all of those involved in that process, especially now since I do it more on a professional level. Right. Even though I'm not doing narrative feature films, I'm doing like commercial work, but there's still like a lot of crossover there and it requires a lot of like, it's showing me how much like thought and passion and care it actually takes to make those things happen, especially when I work with like little to no budget in comparison most of the time. So, I mean, we can maybe like later go on like what are my favorite movies of all time, like that kind of thing. That'll maybe give you a better inkling of like my taste and like kind of where I started liking film. But we can move on for now.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if you know this, but we talked in the overview episode about Nolan. So when he finished college, he was working on like some shorts and stuff with his friends, but his day job was working for like basically like marketing or I can't remember exactly what sort of like company it was, but he was basically just shooting training videos and stuff for companies with like basically no budget. And
he was like in his like late 20s, early 30s, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So who knows?
Yeah, and so
Christopher Nolan, you know.
Confession: Nolan is my favorite director.
Yeah.
By a long shot. Like I love some other ones like your Tarantinos and Scorsese's and stuff, but Nolan is by a large margin my favorite director. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like I said, he's kind of like the household name. Like he's so accessible and like like if you're kind of like obviously like there's his detractors, but it's like it's undeniable that like he's done something with movies that not many people have done, which is like make original stuff that like kills at the box office. Like not a lot of people do that. I mean, you've got Spielberg, James Cameron, like Nolan, and not really a whole lot of others are able to really do that. So
yeah, I agree. And I will preface this and just kind of get it out the way right now. I'm not like I would say I'm a pretty hardcore modern Nolan fan, but I actually haven't seen his first 3 movies.
Yeah,
I haven't seen Insomnia, I haven't seen Memento yet, and I haven't seen what's the very first. Yeah, I haven't seen that one either, which I'm like kicking myself for. But I think I started with like the Dark Knight trilogy and Prestige.
Yeah. If I had to recommend like just one of his early movies, it would be Memento. And a lot of people still will say that's like his. Some people even say that's his best. Still.
Okay.
It's just like it's very like precise and like interestingly constructed. Really good. And some following's okay. It's very obviously made with no budget. And but like really well made for a no budget movie. Insomnia is kind of like his it's probably the least Nolan-y movie of all of his.
Yeah, I was listening to your episode on that one a little bit. But I didn't even realize he'd made a movie with Robin Williams. I was like, like one of my favorite actors. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's still really good. I like Insomnia, but yeah, what was your like? Do you remember what your introduction to Nolan was?
I think it was, and I was looking at the timing of his movies. So I think technically The Prestige was like it came out just after the Batman Begins,
right? Yeah,
but I think I saw The Prestige first.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think at the time, like the notion of like the superhero movie was still kind of fresh.
It was, yeah.
And like I think the only ones I had seen were maybe the original Spider-Man ones, the Raimi. What's the director's name?
Yeah, Sam Raimi.
Sam Raimi. Yeah. I almost said Rami Malek. There's like no wait, that's the actor. But yeah, and I love those. But that was definitely before the whole superhero movie like proper modern one kind of craze caught on. And I loved Hugh Jackman at the time because I think he like that maybe was the tie-in from like X-Men. Like he had like just done that, and
X-Men
then he
had just come out not long before.
And so I did actually like those. I guess it was like right when that whole craze was starting, and so maybe I was like, oh yeah, well maybe I'll check this out, and so I did, and I remember that movie just blew my mind. It was so good. The twist is amazing. Like the whole tone of it, his cinematography. I'm not sure. Was that also a Wally Feister movie for DP?
Yeah.
I think he's done most of them, most of the Nolan movies, but
yeah, he has. I think all except not a few most recent ones, but yeah, everything from like Memento to like
the whole Dark Knight trilogy for sure.
Yeah. I think through the Dark Knight. I think starting with maybe Dunkirk, he switched to Hoyt van Hoytema. Okay. But yeah, all the way through.
Prestige. Yeah, just to get back to that, the Prestige I think was definitely my first one that like really gripped me as like, okay, I need to know who made this movie.
Right. Yeah. That was mine too. Prestige. I think I had seen Batman Begins when I was in high school. I remember watching it like on my TV in my room, I think. Because I didn't see it in theaters. But yeah, I remember the Prestige sticks out because it was like you said, it was the one that was like, whoa, there's a lot going on here.
It was like the most intentional type of movie I'd ever seen. Like it wasn't just like this like happy-go-lucky Disney movie kind of thing, but it also wasn't like a horror film, and it wasn't like super inaccessible. So it just hit right there because like there wasn't like a lot of like, and I don't even think was it R-rated. I think it was just PG-13. Maybe.
Yeah, it was PG-13.
So yeah, like it was just like whatever. Like it doesn't have like a whole lot of like quote unquote bad stuff, and I can just kind of enjoy it and watch it with family, and like it was just a cool thing. So yeah.
Which is funny because he really walks the line. I think for some of his stuff on PG, because like that last picture that you get in The Prestige is pretty horrifying, and
Yeah.
and really too, like in The Dark Knight, which we'll talk about, he does some like editing, like where he cuts at just the right moment so that he can keep it PG-13.
He's pretty good about that, like in Inception, for sure.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it's we can transition to The Dark Knight. Off of that, you were talking about like the kind of genesis of the superhero movie movement, and that really was like, I mean, that was this. This is kind of what did. I mean, you had like franchise stuff being made, like this, like we talked about, Spider-Man, the X-Men,
you had like
stuff.
and even like the older like Batman iterations and like the Superman movies and all that kind of stuff before, but like this was like, it felt different. Oh yeah,
and at that point it was kind of like, oh yeah, every couple decades they'll do some superhero, like a few superhero movies, like they did with Batman. There's been a couple iterations at this point. Spider-Man, the Spider-Man was really like, I guess kind of new. There might have been some other older stuff, but not well known.
And I think like it's
Superman
like,
too.
I think some of these like kind of what maybe set them apart is like these ginormous budgets with like proper VFX and special effects budgets.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't feel kind of like, so like, it didn't feel like a movie, you know what I mean? Like it didn't feel like this like old school, like golden days of Hollywood kind of film.
Right.
It felt like it was a lot more like tangible of a movie.
And modern. Like like if you go back and watch like the 89 Spider-Man, or go back and watch like the 78 Superman, you're like, oh yeah, that was made in 78, or yeah, that was definitely made in 89. Yeah. And so these movies are definitely of their time, for sure.
Now I do have a soft spot for the Clooney Batman movie.
Oh yeah, the Clooney one. Okay.
Both of them. Yeah.
Well, Clooney was only the one. He was only.
Well, didn't he do? Wasn't it Batman and then
Keaton was in the first two Burton ones.
Well, then there's Batman and Robin, right? It was like
Batman and Robin was Val Kilmer, and then
Clooney
was in. No, Clooney was Batman and Robin. Val Kilmer was Batman Forever with Jim Carrey.
Whatever one Schwarzenegger was in is the one I'm talking about.
That was Batman and Robin.
Yes. Okay, then I really like that one. I still do. It's definitely a guilty pleasure movie, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah, that would definitely be considered a guilty pleasure based on like ratings of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it felt the most like comic booky. Like it was just so over the top.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's cheesy in the best way.
Fun fact about that one, they paid Schwarzenegger a ton of money to only be in scenes where you could see his face. So like if you can't see Schwarzenegger's face, then it's not him.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That was like the only way he would do it. He was like, I'll shoot the close-up scenes and then I'm out.
So good.
Yeah. I guess he could do that at that point in his career.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah. So this Dark Knight comes out in 2008, which is the same year as Iron Man. So really, it's like the beginning of the MCU.
Man, okay.
So I think Iron Man came out in like it came out like maybe in the spring. Probably like April or March or May, somewhere in there. And then this came out in the summer. So you really end up with like two trajectories. The one being like the MCU spiraling out of the success of Iron Man. And then like the poor like attempts at dark superhero movie making that spiraled out of the Dark Knight, which is funny because the Dark Knight is still considered like by the vast majority of people like to be the best superhero movie of all time, and yet like I mean it's hard to argue with it, but yet like the trajectory of movies that came out of it were probably like went downhill, whereas the ones that came out of Iron Man, which in its own right is a great movie, really took off. I don't know. I just kind of find that ironic that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I thought Iron Man was like quite a bit later. I thought it was like 2010 or 2011 or something, but it's crazy to hear
Yeah,
it's
no,
08.
08. Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy to think about that. 'Cause yeah, 08 was Iron Man, and then like they kind of amped it up each year following that, and then 2012 was the first Avengers movie. And so like it was kind of like an exponential growth every year, like from 08 to 2012. Yep. 'Cause they started like pumping out more and more of those movies so that they could work up to the Avengers.
Yeah, I remember that whole era was like such a fun time to be into movies.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a fun time, but this movie really like stands out amongst all of that as just something totally like different and unique and special. But yeah, so obviously Nolan had made Batman Begins. He threw in, you got the Joker card reveal at the very end. People freaked out, like, oh, they're gonna do Joker. But Nolan, like, honestly, like if you read like interviews, he was like, he did that. It wasn't like it. He didn't do it with the same intention that like you get a lot of post-credit scenes from Marvel movies these days. Like that wasn't really his intention. It was just kind of like this is just the beginning of Batman. It's kind of like that idea.
Yeah, he meant for it to be like a self-contained origin story, not his intention to be like the beginning of this whole
franchise or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, he's kind of like innately resistant to doing a sequel, which you could probably see with the way his career's gone, like before that and since. He's like very interested in making like original stuff.
I mean, I don't know, man. I'm still waiting on the sequel to Interstellar.
Oh man.
Could you imagine?
Yeah. With Matthew McConaughey, I don't know, what would he be like? Stuck, just the whole movie is just Matthew McConaughey stuck in the whatchamacallit, where the black hole with, I can't remember what it's called, the Tesseract. Stuck in the Tesseract. Anyways, Oh, I wrote down this quote. That'll clear that up. Nolan said, "We wanted to suggest possibilities for how the story would continue, not because we were going to make a sequel." So it was just kind of this idea of like, this is the movie's called Batman Begins. This is just like his beginning, and like they just wanted to suggest, okay, like everyone knows who the Joker is. Let's throw the Joker card in so that you can see like this is the beginning of Batman. Now things are about to get real. For him. It wasn't like to suggest like now we're going to do a Batman movie with Joker. It was just kind of like for the ending of the story purposes.
And sidebar on that, the Batman, like the newer one with Robert Pattinson and stuff. And I know like the Joker is like the biggest villain in the Batman universe, but like just for them to do the same thing more or less in that movie just kind of irked me a little bit. Which I thought it was a great movie, but like it doesn't touch the Dark Knight trilogy for me.
I loved that movie, and it's honestly for me it comes very close to the Dark Knight, as far as like how good I think it is, like all around.
Objectively, yeah.
But that scene is the one thing that's like would keep me from saying it's as quite as good as the Dark Knight, because it's like, what is this like terrible throw-in of the Joker? But I obviously like Nolan was interested in doing the Joker, but one of the things that I think is very cool about the way Nolan did this trilogy is he was able to like make the studio hold off and let the ideas and the movie and like the anticipation like simmer. And really, like, every time he finished one of these, like when he finished Batman Begins and then when he finished Dark Knight, like, it was kind of up in the air of like, is he actually going to do another one? And so like it seems like he was more willing to do the Dark Knight and then like kind of like kind of like really resistant to doing Dark Knight Rises, but then ended up kind of giving in. But he comes out with these pretty like ambitious movies in between each of these Dark Knight movies. And so just that idea that like he's, I don't know, he has the trust of the studio to be like, okay, like maybe I'll do another one, but I'm going to make what I want to make first. And let the kind of ideas from the last movie simmer.
Yeah, his just kind of thinking on his timing of everything that you brought attention to that, like his production schedule must have been ridiculous because like 05 Batman Begins, 06 The Prestige, 08 The Dark Knight, 2010 Inception, 2012 The Dark Knight Rises. Like the dude just like did not stop working because movies, I mean, they take months, sometimes years.
Yeah. Between like so like Inception and The Dark Knight are probably his longest times like actually in production. Both of those were probably, I know this one because I have it sitting in my notes, is like 7 months of production and shooting.
And that's not counting
pre-production. Similar.
Yeah, and that's not counting pre-production either.
Right.
And like planning and writing and scheduling and hiring and all that kind of stuff.
And then, post-production too, you have, so, I mean, yeah, you spend a long time making these movies. And, but with this one, and I want to say it was a similar thing with The Dark Knight Rises. He actually, kind of gets his brother, Jonathan, goes by Jonah, for the family. So basically he's in pre-production for The Prestige. He's getting ready to start shooting The Prestige. And he's like, okay, like Jonah, I think I'm going to do this Batman movie.
He ends up writing quite a few of Christopher's screenplays, right? Like he'll do a lot of the writing and then Christopher will come like supervise and produce and direct.
Right. And Nolan does have a hand in the scripts for basically everything. Like Jonathan wrote The Prestige too, but Nolan like added some stuff back in and like made his adjustments.
Yeah, ultimately it's his movie, right?
Right.
It's just Jonas is kind of doing a lot of that legwork, kind of working as a partner with him.
Yeah, and he it's his brother, and so he knows him, and so he kind of trusts him to write the movie in the way that like Jonah knows his brother too, so he knows like this is a movie that my brother would want to direct and could do well. So yeah, he basically gets Jonah to work on the script for this while he's making The Prestige. It's basically like they took a few ideas. Like, so one would be like at the end of Batman Begins, Gordon kind of suggests this escalation of things now that Batman is kind of like out there. And so they take that idea of escalation and like Batman Begins is a very like personal film for Bruce and Batman. And this one, is already like escalated a good bit. Like I think it's supposed to be set around like 9 months to a year after.
Yeah,
Batman
it's not
Begins.
super long after, but it's kind of enough to like for the world or at least Gotham to realize like what has happened and kind of digest that for a little while.
Yeah,
and so you kind of see the telltale signs of everybody being like super on edge. It's like I don't like it tonight, man. It was what that one guy said. It's like what, you have more chance of winning the Powerball than running into him.
Yeah,
and so it's a cool dynamic.
It's escalated. They ran with that idea. So before he even took it to Jonah, I think he did do talks. He did a few months of talks with David Goyer, who was the co-writer with Chris Nolan for Batman Begins.
Gotcha.
So if you like look at the credits, I think Chris and Jonathan have the screenplay credit, but Chris and David Goyer have the story credit, which is like a whole, like, I don't know. It's like, I guess it's one of those things. It's like when you actually write the script, you're putting the story to paper, but you can still get story credit. I don't know.
Yeah, the screenplay, like I would imagine, like actually has all of like the actor notes and all that kind of stuff, like the actual like what you see in the script, more so than just like
the
if you were to read a book of it, which would be like kind of like the story. But there's so much minutia in all of the like the Hollywood crediting system, so they want to make sure everybody gets paid.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, so after kind of Nolan and Goyer kind of get the framework of the story kind of nailed down, I think I read that they had all the like main beats kind of written on index cards.
Perfect.
I guess Nolan was like, "Here, Jonah," and like toss the index cards at him. It's like, I'm gonna go make Prestige now.
Gosh.
But yeah, one of the things I think they decided, like, during the writing, was that they were going to name it The Dark Knight, which is really, like, when you think about it, a pretty ballsy move, to take Batman out of the title of the Batman movie.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I never thought about that.
Because up to this point, like everything Batman has Batman in the title, whether it's
like
shows or movies or comics, usually even.
Now that you're saying that, I am kind of like remembering the hype around that name. Just the thought of it alone, I was like, oh yeah, like this is weird. Like I know what it is because I saw like the trailer or like just like the iconography and the typeface and all that kind of stuff. And you see like directed by Christopher Nolan. It's like, oh, okay, this is more Batman.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a very interesting thing, and to also have it be the most successful of the trilogy, just. I don't know. Maybe it's just the intrigue that it caused. I mean, that's definitely not the only factor, but that's kind of a cool thing to point out.
Yeah, it's one of those things where Nolan has a tendency to do this. You kind of flip something on its head, and because things are done in Hollywood a certain way because they work to a certain degree. There's formulas and ways that things are done because generally they work. But Nolan has this way of like flipping things on their head, and it's still like working out like even better than it would have otherwise. And this is one of those like small examples of that. Like, okay, like the formula is have Batman in the title because that's what sells. But I'm going to flip that on its head and name the movie something that like suggests Batman, but doesn't have Batman in the title. And it's going to be the most successful superhero movie of all time.
Yeah. Do you know if that was like one of the nicknames for Batman in like the comic series? Like, did they pull that from anywhere?
Yeah, it's, I mean, he's referred to as that in various places. Like there's the Dark Knight Returns comic. That's a pretty like
I feel like I'd read that somewhere before. I just was making sure.
Yeah, like Dark Knight Returns is a comic arc where Batman's like old, and he's like having to kind of return to action because something comes up. Yeah, so it's definitely that. I want to say those comics were like 80s, somewhere in the 80s. Somebody that might get mad at me for getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Frank Miller. But you can just like at me, I guess, afterwards if I got that wrong. Batman Twitter or whatever.
A quick Google reveals Detective Comics number 45 is where he was first called the Dark Knight.
Okay, so that's really early on.
A year and a half after his first appearance.
Yeah, because Detective Comics was his first like comics. It wasn't called Batman; it was Detective Comics. But and another thing that I really like that they did with this kind of goes along with the writing of the screenplay is, and it starts with Batman Begins, obviously, but Nolan is more interested in like writing good characters and story than he is in like the fan service, which is where I think a lot of modern superhero movies kind of go wrong. Like you've got to have like the reveal of this character, and you've got to have like the post-credit scene where you show this character might be in the next movie,
Mm-hmm.
and Nolan's like totally doesn't care about like any of that stuff.
Yeah,
He's
as
just
long as
like,
the story's good.
right. Yeah, and even like if you look at interviews and stuff with Nolan, he even talks about the Joker. He was interested in the Joker not because he was like the Joker's like a great villain, which he wouldn't deny that he is, but he was interested in a Joker because he was thinking about what he wanted to do with like the Bruce Wayne Batman like character arc, and the Joker he felt like was the best villain to do that arc with, like to follow that story along with. So it's doing the Joker wasn't some like gimmick to get butts and seats, even though it did. It absolutely did. But
and I totally feel like Nolan could have taken any Batman villain and kind of like humanized him like he did in these movies. Like these movies felt very like plausible. But do you think that the Joker is like maybe the most plausible to exist in real life character out of all the Batman villains? And like that's maybe why he was drawn to him, because it felt maybe the most moldable to fit his story.
Yeah, it probably has something to do with that. There's obviously there's a lot of different iterations of the Joker, and so a lot of the iterations have, his skin is white because he fell in some chemicals sort of thing or whatever, or he has all kinds of different origins or non-origins. But yeah, he definitely, like, the way the Joker operates feels pretty grounded in like it could be grounded in reality, which does match what the Nolans were trying to do with this screenplay, which is like, we already like took a step forward with like grounding a comic book movie in reality with Batman Begins, but they decided to like take it a step further. Batman Begins has a lot of set pieces, like Gotham set pieces that were built. One of them was built in a big, old air hangar outside of London. And this movie is just Chicago. It's
mostly,
like there's not any like Gotham set pieces in this movie. Any stuff they do in studio is just because like they got to grab some green screen stuff or whatever. But anything like on the streets it's literally just Chicago.
Yeah, and fun fact, I was in Chicago yesterday. I just got back.
I was seeing your Instagram story, and I was like, I think Houston's in Chicago.
I did it just for the podcast, man, just to have reference images. No, I'm kidding. I had a marketing conference out there, but I was like, I'm going to go under the subway, like where he crashes Lamborghini and stuff. And I'm like, I got to take all the pictures. And I didn't do like a whole like photo tour thing. I just kind of like snapped some pictures of like what I thought was like, oh, like maybe they shot this here, or like kind of just admiring the scenery and stuff. And I've been there a few times. I mean, definitely since the movie was shot. But it was just kind of a cool thought because like I had this on my like this podcast on my brain at the moment. And I was like, oh yeah, I have to like pay extra special attention to like all this kind of stuff and like look at the skyline and look at the city and the subways and all that kind of stuff. So I think it was, from what I remember, maybe in some old behind the scenes stuff, like I know that predominantly was Chicago, and you can obviously see that in the movie, but I think some of it may have been New York. And then they had like the whole Hong Kong scene as well.
Yeah, there was I think there was like a couple of things shot in New York and London. But yeah, I didn't look up, I didn't try to like do research into like the percentage. But like if you like you go to IMDb and like go to the filming locations section and kind of scroll through, like you'll see some stuff in London, and I think there might be one New York. I can't remember if there is or not, honestly. But if you scroll through, like you just keep seeing like Chicago, and then like there'll be like London or Hong Kong, like obviously like the Hong Kong scenes are in Hong Kong
for sure. Yeah.
But there'll be like some London peppered in.
Yeah. To your point though, like it is really cool that they used a lot of just like on location, real, like actual built cities. Like they didn't, it added to the realism of it because it kind of grounded it and made it feel, even though it's quote unquote Gotham, it made it feel more relatable because it's so like legitimately real.
Yeah. And part of what they like, so one of the things that really like Nolan was interested in is doing like the city as like I guess like the synthesis as like city and myth, or like a city and legend, like a legend. So like in the back of his mind, kind of making this movie, he had Michael Mann's Heat, which is like very much an LA crime story. And one of the things he loved about Heat was how like the city was very much a part of the story, and the whole story was like contained in LA. So you have a lot of LA movies where like LA is a big part, but like they're going here, they're going there, or whatever. But Heat is like contained there in LA, and that's kind of the feel he wanted. He wanted it to be like really like it ends up being sort of I mean, it's a Gotham, but it feels like a Chicago movie.
And that's one of my nitpicks about the whole Marvel versus DC universe like thing, is that like Marvel is grounded in anything that's on Earth, at least, is like real. It's like based on a real place, like Spider-Man's from New York and all this kind of stuff. But then like you have Superman from quote unquote Metropolis, and then you have Batman from Gotham, and I mean, obviously they're like alien planets and stuff in both universes, but I do prefer that aspect of Marvel better because it's easy to kind of visualize things that way.
Right. And I think that's maybe what like Nolan was trying to do here is like, okay, like Gotham has always been this like, what city is it exactly? And he was like, let's ground this even more in reality, because like Gotham has always had like aspects of several like big American cities. But Chicago, and I think he even said like something that he liked, obviously like he grew up half of his life in Chicago. Him and his brother went to school. That's where his brother went to high school.
I know, doesn't he have like one British parent and one American parent or something like that? And so like he was kind of like,
his mom is from the Chicago area, and so they kind of went back and forth his whole childhood. So Chicago means something to him that way, but he kind of talks about how something he likes about Chicago is that it's not quite as like recognizable as New York City or LA. Like if you watch a movie and you see like the streets of New York, you're like, that's New York City or that's LA. But Chicago has a little bit like it. I think it's becoming more and more recognizable, but
it's just not as used. Like New York is used for everything. LA is used for everything. Like everybody knows the Hollywood sign in LA and Hollywood, and everybody knows Times Square and the Empire State Building and the Hudson and all that kind of stuff in New York. So I totally see that.
Yeah, and so he really takes the Chicago-ness of it and runs with it. And then too, like he even just stay on that for one more second. Like one of the things that I think it does is it brings like a weight to the city and a kind of depth to it. Not even in the sense of like thematic depth, but like I think literal depth. So like we'll talk more about like those IMAX shots of the city, but like if you compare like some of the shots, even just going back to like Batman, like there's maybe one or two shots in Batman Begins where you really feel like the depth of a city, because they did shoot on like sound stages that were built sets and stuff a lot more. And so with this one, you have all those shots of the city and you see like literal depth. You're like, oh, this is
it's hard to fake for sure.
It's the city that I'm in. Like even like if you think back to like the 89 like the Tim Burton Batmans, those were like very stylized and very obviously like set like built on sound stages, and there's like not depth to that. Like you don't watch those and feel like, man, this is a wide, expansive, like huge city that this is taking place in. And you feel like that in this movie because of that groundedness. But yeah, then, I mean, you also have like other things that ground it in reality. You kind of get rid of the Batcave in Wayne Manor. You know, that the explosion of Wayne Manor was an excuse for them to like even ground it even more. You know, he has his little underground bunker and he's in a penthouse, and you have a lot of stuff happening on like business suites in Chicago buildings and stuff.
Fun fact: a YouTuber, Unbox Therapy, owns that space now.
Okay.
And so, like, you just see Bruce Wayne's bunker in every YouTube video he does these days. It's hilarious.
That's cool.
With all, like, I mean, I don't actually know where he is. I think he's in Toronto.
Okay.
I know he's Canadian. I don't know if he's currently based there, but it's also been used for like music videos and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the same like endless like tiled lights across the ceiling and just concrete, and he just set up a unboxing YouTube channel in there. I'm like, first time I saw it, I was like, hey, that's super weird looking.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks amazing, but it was such like a weird like dissonance in my brain of
kind
like
of expect to see the tumbler like driving through the background. Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, like getting into influences, we've kind of like been touching around this. Like I mentioned Michael Mann's Heat, which you have the city influences of, but you also have like some other like homages to Heat, which like, so there's the bank robbery scene that it opens with, and that's very much an homage to a couple of different sequences in Heat. Actually, I had not seen Heat and had wanted to for a long time, and so I used research for this as an excuse to finally watch it.
There you go. I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's an incredible movie. It's even longer than Dark Knight, which is saying something. So I watched it broken up. I watch a lot of movies kind of broken up just because, you know, I have 2 young kids, and it's like I'll watch an hour of the movie after I put the kids to bed before I go to bed, sort of thing.
Yeah, committing 2 to 3 hours for a movie is kind of a tall order these days.
It is. And so I just kind of, it's not the ideal way to watch a movie, but it's but I like, it works for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's, you even have like, so you have these homages to the action sequences in Heat. And then you also have like, so in Heat you have Robert De Niro, who's the bank robber, and Al Pacino, who's the detective. And they're kind of like these equal but opposite, like opposing forces. And they kind of like mirror each other in a way that like really like you kind of feel with Batman and Joker, like the way that they're kind of equal opposite forces that mirror each other in these, in like their goals and what they're wanting to do. And so yeah, like if you watch Heat and this back to back like I did, you're like, okay, yeah, there's definitely like a lot of Heat in this movie. But then too, like you have a lot of other influences, like we mentioned New York. So obviously this is a Chicago movie, but he takes like influence from like some New York movies that are very grounded in the city too, like Dog Day Afternoon with another Pacino, and The French Connection, which I've never seen either of those. So
I think I need to kind of culture myself on some Pacino movies. I haven't seen either of them either.
Yeah. I do need to watch some more Pacino, to be honest, myself. But yeah, and then like so one of the things that Nolan loves is Mies van der Rohe is a architect that built a lot of like the modernist Chicago buildings. And so like that style he really likes like capturing, and you know the big like open windows stuff is like Van der Rohe stuff that he uses in some of like the stuff that's shot interior looking out. And then and so like he's kind of able to work in like some of those Chicago things that he liked as like influences for the aesthetic.
And especially since he's still like you said, like on location, it's not a soundstage. Like it just adds to that kind of immersion and realism to it. You can actually see the cityscape behind it, and it's just kind of like, I mean, you can't like make the city stop, so you just kind of have to see like cars and people in the background, like kind of in a distance, and other buildings just kind of existing. So it's a cool vibe.
Oh yeah. And then like as far as other influences, which we'll have to like hit this real quick and move on, because we'll talk about Joker a lot more
For sure.
in just a bit. But there are there's influences for Joker for both Nolan and Ledger that I found in research. So for Nolan, he took influence from like the very first iteration of the Joker, in the 40s comics, who was based on The Man Who Laughs, which is an old movie. The kind of atmosphere of who the Joker was, kind of like what kind of person he was. The Man Who Laughs is a big influence. And then Fritz Lang is a German director. He had a couple of movies based on this character, Dr. Mabuse, who's kind of like this semi-insane kind of guy that's kind of behind a lot of going like crazy stuff goings on in the city. And then the third thing that Nolan actually like was interested in Francis Bacon, going all the way back to his high school days. But Francis Bacon was a Irish British painter who painted these like really like disturbing images of people's like distorted faces, and really like if you have access right now to like your phone or any Google.
I'm looking all this up in real time as we're talking.
But if you're listening, like just Google Francis Bacon, and it's like, well, these are disturbing images. And Francis Bacon, like very like famously, he like didn't clean up his like studio space, so it was just like cluttered with like mess, and that was like his inspiration. Like he would use like the mess and the chaos of his studio space as inspiration for like his paintings, which were just like bizarre. Yeah, if you look them up, they're just bizarre. And so like all of that kind of like melded into like his inspiration of what he wanted to do with Joker. And then Ledger, which we'll talk more about like how he got casted and stuff later, but Ledger took it upon himself to like find his own influence. So he took influence from Alice Cooper. I think he had like a mood board that he had made with like images. So I think he had like some Francis Bacon on there because Nolan had mentioned it, and then he had like Alice Cooper and Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols. And then another big one was Alex from A Clockwork Orange, which if you ever seen any images from A Clockwork Orange, like you know who Alex is.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a guy, which I've never seen A Clockwork Orange, but I've seen some clips.
Me neither. I'm kind of afraid to.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about it, to be honest.
Heard it's really like just disturbed and really heavy on the sexual content and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that just kind of like unhinged kind of character he really pulled inspiration from. And then even like one of the things that I liked, he kind of watched a lot of like Chaplin, like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, to kind of like pick up on their body language and their body movement, which like you really see. I guess that was kind of like in the back of my mind when I was watching this time. And like, so one of the things that jumps out is like when he rolls out of like the semi truck after it flips, like just the way he like rolls out of it and kind of stumbles about and like is walking. It was very much like early slapstick comedy kind of style of body.
Yeah, and
movement.
then like how he plays with like his jacket too, and like the scene where he first talks to the Falcone like crime syndicate family, and he's like kind of like tugging on his jacket with the cord to the grenades and stuff. Yeah. He's very playful and kind of like just kind of like cheeky with it almost.
Yeah. It's very much it's like that kind of self-aware but like clumsy way of like holding your body.
Yeah, and like he knows he's playing a character. Like it's Heath Ledger playing a character playing a character.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Joker is very much like a theatrical presence,
for
like
sure.
that he's putting on, or maybe that he just is at that point, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other influences that we could talk about, but just getting into the production, I mentioned, you know, this was 7 months of shooting, so you've got a long period of shooting, and he's working with $185 million budget, which is a huge budget.
Jeez.
I think it's definitely his biggest budget. I would have to look up. I
I would
didn't look up if
imagine
it
like
was his biggest ever, but I think it might be.
I would imagine like maybe Interstellar may have been, just because of all the visual effects and stuff.
Maybe. But I mean, yeah, Interstellar even was
I mean, yeah, it's
I don't think
mostly
it had any
soundstage stuff.
CGI. Like, I know Inception was like 160, so a little less, still a huge budget.
Mhm.
But yeah, now I'm stuck in my
Interstellar definitely had
Inception
CGI.
notes.
I remember the whole like story about the black hole generation, and like you went to this like
yeah.
scientific like institute or like a school or something like that, and they spent like hours and hours and hours, and like I think I saw the figure, it was like so many hundreds of years of computer rendering time to like make that movie possible. So like they had to like send it out to like this big farm and stuff. But that's I'm not doing that movie, but I would love to. That's another one of my favorites.
Yeah. It's definitely coming down the line. But yeah. I mean, like we said, you've got stuff shot in Chicago you're over 7 months. You're going between Chicago and Hong. I mean, imagine like he's like, I want to get some shots in Hong Kong. So let's take our like team of 100 people. Let's fly us all out to Hong Kong and all of our
so
equipment.
wild. But then to have a budget that just says yes to that kind of stuff is such a crazy concept to me.
Yeah. And this was, so one of the things that like helps is this was like the kind of beginnings of like, hey, let's shoot some of our movie in China so that our movie will sell like more in China, sort of thing. This was kind of like the beginnings of that kind of studio way of thinking, was during this period. And so that probably helped that the studios were starting to think in that way, and we're like, okay, yeah, we'll give you some money to go out there, because then our movie will like make more money in China because there's stuff shot in China. Which makes sense. Like that, you know, I mean, the Chinese government is probably like way less likely to like shut down your movie if you like shoot some stuff in their country.
It's a good thought.
So like marketing. But yeah, Nolan was able to get those. But yeah, the cinematography in this movie it really is just incredible. The shots of Chicago, there's like several just like iconic, incredible shots. And even like the shot of Hong Kong of like Christian Bale standing on that building is just like an incredible shot.
His helicopter shots are like wild.
Yeah.
To me, they look like like old school like nature documentaries, kind of like when like you can see like the camera with the really long lens on top of the helicopter, like chasing down like a pack of like cheetahs, like running across like the African savannah somewhere. But like it kind of gives that like big grandiose kind of feel to it. Yeah,
and part of it is because he's using the IMAX camera.
That's what he's a fan of for sure.
Yeah, and so a lot of people may not realize this, but The Dark Knight is the first like narrative film that used IMAX. Like you can go look, like everything up to this point was just nature documentaries.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go look it up. It's now I don't know if there's like any like really short stuff that was made in IMAX, but it's the first like narrative feature for sure that ever was shot.
That's crazy. And now it's just like
with IMAX.
It's just like a choice some directors make. Like, I mean, a lot of them are using their Aries and stuff, but
right. Yeah, there's you know, we talked a little bit about it because we did a IMAX movies draft in the overview episode, but there's now like digital cameras that are like IMAX certified, that a lot of like Marvel movies have some
the Alexis
now.
Alexa 65 LF is probably one of the few.
Yeah, that's one of them.
There's probably a Panasonic and what's it? Panavision.
Yeah, there's the Panavision has one. There's a Sony one now.
Venice probably.
Yep. Man, you know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I'm a super cinema camera nerd.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Sony Venice and like is up there with like the Reds and the Aries and stuff that are all like pretty close to film. Actually, I think Red's latest claim or Aries' latest claim on one of their newest cameras, it actually exceeds the dynamic range of film, which is crazy. It's like the first time that's ever happened in the digital world.
Yeah. It's hard. Is it one of those things where like you can claim that, but there's no way to actually measure it?
No,
so, I know
that's measurable.
Okay. I was just wondering because, like, I know when you talk about like vinyl versus like digital audio, there's not really a way to like measure and compare the sound quality between the two.
No, there is. There are specialized tools that you can like give known values for certain stops of light, is what it's known as.
Okay.
And so every time you can see a clean stop of light from a singular point, in both directions, either darker or brighter, that's a degree of dynamic range or a stop of dynamic range. And so I think I want to say the human eye is like somewhere around like 20 to 25 or something like that. And then like my camera, like my photo camera is like 15. And then like a nice $100,000 Arri cinema camera is like 17 now, which is like nearing what film can do or even surpassing in some areas, which is crazy. So I'm sure that like, I mean, IMAX shoots in a very specific type of film format of the 65 millimeter film.
Right.
And I think sometimes 70, which is maybe what Oppenheimer was shot on.
No, it's so like, it's a weird thing. Like the film is actually 65 millimeter, but when they make the prints, it's 70.
Okay.
Which
they upscale it a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. So like the prints that go out that are actually like rolled through the reels in theaters are like are 70 millimeter, but the actual like what the camera is shooting on is 65. I'm not really sure why that is, but that kind of came up in my like quick internet research when I was looking into that.
Yeah, and so like the Arri 65 LF is meant to mimic a 65 millimeter sensor size or like a film frame size on a digital camera. Yeah. And so the bigger that sensor is, the more light it can let through, the clearer the image, the bigger lenses, the fancier lenses, high resolution lenses and stuff you can kind of stick on the camera to get a better image quality or closer to real life. And that's why I've heard Nolan say that like he prefers IMAX because it looks the most similar to human vision and it does all these like crazy things with like what they call like the 3D pop in film, where it like the contrast is just right and you can like kind of tell depth better on the film even though it's a 2D format. So
yeah, and it has that it has like that shallow depth of focus that mimics the human eye too, where
the bigger the format, the easier it is to get a shallow depth of field.
Which is all that kind of language I'm kind of like growing in my knowledge of. So I'll like, I dip my toes in it, but I don't understand it as much as like people that actually like work with it. But it is very interesting to me, like the idea, like I'm doing like a faith in film small group at my church, and I'm watching like Citizen Kane, which is very famously like one of the movies that popularized like the deep focus filmmaking. And then like, I don't know, just like contrasting what you get with that deep focus, where like everything's kind of in focus, with like these like, headshots in IMAX where like pretty much just like the person right in front of the camera is the only thing in focus. Just like what you like, the feel that you get from the different, like what you can do like cinematography wise and communicate with those different ways of like filming is like very interesting.
I watched an in-depth thing with I'm skipping on his name, but the director of photography for Joker, like the Joaquin Phoenix one. and that movie was shot on the Alexa 65 LF.
Yeah.
And he actually used like some old like vintage Nikon glass and like some other like cool like cinema lenses and stuff, but some with very wide apertures that produced very thin depth of field. So like even more on that one, like that's probably the most like crazy thin, super blurry background, thin depth of field, like for contrast, even compared to like some of these Nolan ones.
Yeah.
So in terms of like cinematography, that movie's off the charts in terms of cinematography. It's incredible.
Yeah. It's one of those things like that you really like either have to be really into like analyzing film like I am, like that. I have no experience like working with cameras or anything, but I'm just into analyzing film. And then like, or like someone like you that like works with cameras a lot, and kind of has to be knowledgeable about them so you know how to use them well.
For sure.
Like otherwise, like people are just like enjoying the movie, but like I think subconsciously, like when you see so like I watch this on my, I have a 50-inch TV. It's not anything huge, but like watching this on Blu-ray, just on my 50-inch TV, when you switch from the kind of wide CinemaScope shots, which most of the film is in the 35 millimeter stuff, to the IMAX shots where it just all of a sudden like the screen is filled and it pops so much.
Does it jump between like black bars and no black bars?
It does.
Oh, man, I miss that all the time because I'm just like so sucked into the story. But that happens That happens way more than you think it does too.
Yeah, especially with movies nowadays that are like doing a lot of like they'll shoot stuff like Nolan started that. Like with this movie, he started the whole like I'm going to shoot this action set piece in IMAX, and
on different cameras too. I think he used like 3 different ones for this movie.
They had so they had like I think they were working with like 3 or 4 of the like MSM, which is like the more lightweight IMAX cameras. And
then they had like the huge Mark IIIs as well.
I think they might have had that for some stuff, but most of the time they were working in motion with them, so they were using like the lightweight ones.
Yeah, because I was going to comment on that because I was like kind of trying to pay attention. That I rewatched the movie again last night just to kind of be extra fresh, but I noticed that during the action scenes, it's all very like first person perspective, like you're like actually in the fights and stuff. And like the panning is like a lot more jarring. It's like on the shoulder rig kind of vibe where you're like looking through the operator's eyes almost. And like, it's not like a particularly like close or tight shot. It's like very much like that 50 mil, like human vision kind of field of view. But yeah, they're not afraid of motion. They're not afraid of kind of like you missing a few things here and there because it's like mimicking your head kind of jerking back and forth going between these different points of interest of like there's a punch that landed here, but then a building exploded behind him. So you have to like hurry up and look that way. And it's just kind of, it all kind of feels like one shot, even though it's not, which is, I thought was really cool. But then the contrast is that they go back to their dollies and jibs and trucks and stuff.
Right.
And all these like smooth, pretty motions and helicopter shots during the more like expositional points of the movie.
Yeah. Like one of the things that stands out that I noticed, there are a couple of times where they use like the 360 dolly, which is becoming more kind of a cliche to use. But the way Nolan uses them, one thing I appreciate about Nolan is like you'll have these ways of shooting that can just be like cliche ways of shooting in movies, but he never does them without purpose.
Yeah,
so
and there's only so many camera shots too. Like you can only move it so many directions and variations on those directions, so you kind of have to like pick a lane at one point.
Right. Yeah, but like so one of the things I'm thinking of is so like the Joker in the party for Dent. That Bruce throws, you get in part of that, you get kind of like a 360 dolly shot kind of going around, but like there's complete like purpose behind it, which is you kind of are pulled into the chaos of what the Joker's doing, like the way the camera moves around him and like follows him in the $360 thing as he's like moving around in between all the people.
Yeah, and you can
like,
see people's
really
faces and stuff. You can kind of see their reactions of him walking in. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say that when that scene was happening, like they maybe like some people didn't know that he was about to walk into the scene or something when they shot.
I think I've heard that before.
And so like they wanted like a genuine reaction, or that was the first scene that those people had seen him in full makeup. I think that's what it was.
Maybe so.
And so they were like, this is like their first reaction to like what it is, and they just like wanted it to be super genuine, which I really appreciate. I like when directors do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, just like him shooting with purpose, and then man, when it really stood out to me this time, probably because I was like intentionally looking for it. I was thinking like, okay, I want to see like when it switches to IMAX, and like you go from like the CinemaScope widescreen, which you got the black bars for, and then all of a sudden you're getting this like helicopter shot of Chicago, and it goes boom, and you just see like the height of the city. Like you can see like, oh man, like this is a huge city. Like you can see like whole skyscrapers because it's. I mean, what are the IMAX screens? They're like 8 stories or something like that. The IMAX screens
they're big.
Yeah, they're big.
But they're meant to be bigger than your standard field of vision, so you have to like move your head. Right. To like see, that's the whole purpose, is that you have to kind of like be immersed in it enough to where like even by a few degrees you have to turn your head and eyes back and forth to see the whole image. Yeah,
and Wally Feister, I think you said, I don't really know how.
I think it's
which way it's
Feister.
Pronounced.
Yeah.
Okay. So he talked about in some of the behind the scenes and in books that I'm reading, how like that was a challenge when they were shooting in IMAX, because there's parts where like when you're getting the helicopter shots of the city, obviously like it's not a big deal. Like, you don't have to worry about like where people's eyes are going to unless there's like some action.
Yeah, because it's like a texture almost.
Right. But like but when they're going like following the Joker and his like minions around the bank, like those are shot in IMAX too, and like you really have to like block out the scenes and like have people moving where you need them to move really well, because it is such a big expansive screen aspect ratio that like you want to make sure that people's like vision is drawn to the right spot at the right time, so that they're getting like the action that they need to see and not missing anything.
Yeah, and that use of those IMAXs with the ability to get really shallow like fields of focus, like can like focus is a huge part of like drawing your eye to where they want you to see. And also like I think color with like the clown masks and stuff really helps with that motion as well. Real quick on the very opening scene where you see they're pushing into the building and then the window explodes. I don't know if it's just me, but every single time I watch the movie, I'd try to pick out which window is about to pop.
Yeah. You can see all the windows very clearly.
Yeah. But I'm like, oh wait, is it like because there's a vent? Is it like over to the left of the vent? Is it above the vent? Is it like diagonal? And like I always mess it up, but it's a fun little kind of Easter egg for me.
Yeah, and they really like had stuntmen ziplining across buildings in Chicago for that.
So crazy.
Like you can go watch the behind the scenes footage.
It's incredible. Practical effects for sure.
Oh yeah. One of the things about using those like IMAX cameras, so like the camera operator, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he the rig guy or whatever, I can't remember his exact title, but he basically made like a Steadicam sort of rig for those MSM cameras. So like in that opening scene where they're like running across the top of a building, like he's following them with that. Yeah. So he said the camera itself is around 50 pounds, but once you add the whole rig, he said it's like around 100 pounds that he's like having to like follow these guys with.
Especially IMAX cameras, because they're film, so they have to digital cameras are way lighter because they're there are heavy aspects to them, but yeah, they don't have to carry a giant film canister attached to it as well.
Yeah. So he said like after the second day, like it was either late the second day or maybe sometime on the third day. I think that was like a 5-day shoot that they did for that whatever that specific part. But like the camera actually like broke the arm for the Steadicam. And like you can see, like I was watching like the behind the scenes, and like they actually have the footage of like
from the
camera's point of view of it falling onto the ground. And
see,
I'm
reading your
break, but
well, good. I'm sure that thing is hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I'm reading your notes kind of along, like so I can just kind of follow where we're going in the next talking points. And you just wrote broke arm second day, and I was like, wait, who broke their arm?
No, no one broke their arm. The camera broke its arm that was holding it up. Somebody might have broken their arm.
I'm sure there's plenty of injuries on a movie this big.
But yeah, lots of insurance, both for people and cameras.
Their sacrifice was worth it.
Yeah. So, we were saying like, thank goodness that camera didn't break when it fell. But there's actually like when they were doing the dent Joker like car chase scene. That whole long chase through like the lower Wacker Drive stuff. They actually did break one of the cameras. There's like footage you can see in the behind the scenes footage. It's one. So they had them like mounted on these like arms that were coming off of these like SUVs that they were using to drive around with. And there was like there was a section where like there's kind of the trucks like ramming into some cars, and the way that the SUV got bumped from that wreck swung the arm like crash into like the truck or something.
I've seen like horror story like reels of those things because that happens kind of often because that's just a high risk place to put a camera, even if the arm itself is secure. Like if it gets bumped or like they hit it,
swung.
If they go over too big of a bump on the ground, it'll like hit the ground or like it'll hit like a pole or something that they're passing by. Terrifying.
Yeah. So that was I think it was probably one of those like MSM lightweight cameras that were rigged up on one of those arms, but yeah, they did break one.
Jeez.
But yeah, the camera work is just so well done in this movie, and even like editing wise, like it's really well done. I do think like there's some like sections in the movie that are a little disorienting for me, like editing wise, like the way it jumps was kind of like I wasn't sure where I was.
He doesn't really do like transitions. It's just all hard cuts. It's like super old school.
Oh yeah.
For the most part, I think in most Nolan movies,
which is not that. So I think my opinion is that Nolan is not that great at like up close action shooting and editing, but he's very, very like masterful at like big scale action and editing those shots. So like. Like the tower, like the hostage tower stuff at the end is kind of like it's a little shaky with like how it's shot and edited. But some of it is like, to be honest, like doing research like into his thought process on stuff like that. So like I know with Batman Begins, you have like the disorienting action that happens like in the shipping container scene. But like it's purposeful. Like his whole idea was that Batman was sort of like the alien in the movie Alien. Like you kind of catch glimpses of him, but don't ever really see him fully
I love that part.
Until he decides to like reveal himself more fully. And so like there probably is purpose for it, but it still kind of can be like disorienting as a viewer. But yeah, that's just like a small nitpick. I do think he's like master level at like big action set pieces and the way they're shot and edited.
And And I'll go on to say this. I think his movies, and before we move on from like the whole production cinematography thing, but I think his movies from that aspect are greater than the sum of their parts in most cases. Like I think shot for shot, there are movies that have better cinematography and better editing and not better storytelling. I think he pretty much nails that. But I think if you were to like super dissect every single shot, they're not as like pretty as a Wes Anderson frame or like even like the Batman or like the Joker. Like I think cinematography wise, like just if you took a frame of those movies, a lot of those frames are going to be just like straight up prettier and like more like kind of just composed than some of the Nolan stuff. But Nolan's has a realism that just kind of draws you in more. And it's less of an art piece and more of a story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and he is very much more interested in that, the realism of it. Like, I mean, Wes Anderson is like highly stylized, and he's just doing something totally different than Nolan is doing. And so like, I do appreciate that. I do think like he does capture like the realism of it, like the groundedness of.
That's what I'm getting at. It feels like you're sitting in that scene. Which I really appreciate, which like a lot of these movies that I've referenced or directors that have referenced, that they just kind of go for something that's like aesthetically pleasing more so than something that's going to actually draw you into the story even more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The, kind of moving on a little bit. So I have like a list of really cool special effects stuff that we can shoot through. But before we do that, I did want to mention like the score in this movie, which for Batman Begins, you had Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard kind of work on the score together. So you have the more like synthy, like heavy stuff from Zimmer, and then the more like swelling, more like traditional orchestra stuff from Howard. And then you get that again too with this movie. But with this movie, like I really felt like they really like took a step forward in the purpose behind like the duality of the score, kind of matching like the dualities that are going on in the movie between like Batman and Joker, and then even like eventually like the duality of Harvey Dent and becoming Two-Face.
Absolutely.
Really good. One of the really cool things about Zimmer's Joker theme is that he spent like a ton of time coming up with all these like strange, jarring ways to like make sounds. So I mean, he was like scraping razor blades on piano strings.
Yeah,
and,
I've seen a little bit of that, the behind the scenes and stuff. But continue.
Yeah. And so like he sent Nolan this like 9,000 bar like long like recordings of all these things he did, and Nolan like listened to it on the way to Hong Kong and like got back with him and basically said like, that was a lot. He was like, I think the Joker sound is somewhere in there, and I trust you to find it. Basically, what he told him. And but what they ended up going with, they had this celloist that came in, and it's really just one long drawn out note. So like I was actively listening for it as I watched.
About like the ascending, like so you have really tense thing.
It starts off with this cello note that's kind of like, it's one note, but it's kind of like it goes back and forth from like smooth to more staccato, like so you have like all that kind of stuff. It's one note on cello, but then you have this kind of like droning. It's kind of like it's both cello and like these like droning guitar sort of stuff that he starts layering on top of that. So it's really like one note plus like an ascending note that starts getting laid on top of it, where it rises over that one note that continues. And that's like the joke. That's the sign of the Joker, and especially like when chaos is about to break out.
Yeah, I remember the first scene where he's like he feigns his death with Gamble, and he like does the whole speech of like, let's put a smile on your face for the first time, and like that music is playing in the background. It's like, oh my gosh, like the tension is unreal.
Yeah, and if you listen like with intention, you can hear all the places where like I want to say there's even like some spots where he hasn't quite even come on screen yet. But that's kind of starts up and it kind of indicates like, okay, here comes the Joker, which is really cool. But yeah, yeah, it's I think the score is incredible for this movie. But yeah, so let's talk through these special effects things. I'll ask you this: what is like the standout special effect for you in this movie? Like when you think about the Dark Knight, what's like the action special effect that you think of first?
It's probably when they overturn the 18-wheeler.
Yeah.
When he links the cable around the light post and flips the 18-wheeler.
Yeah.
That's probably one of them. Just anything with the tumbler, honestly.
Yeah. I think that is like the standout one. So like I think part of it is because that might have been in like the trailers too. So like you were getting it like even before. I don't remember seeing trailers for this just because I was in high school. I don't know that I was watching movie trailers in high school, but yeah, that is like the standout one, I think. And
then like the whole chase scene leading up to that, like in the tunnels and stuff, like or the lower level, whatever they want to call it, but just to have that as the culmination of it, and then he kind of just like spills out of the car, and then they have their confrontation. It's incredible.
So that the semi flip, they had like this giant piston like mounted in the truck that basically like shot out of the bottom of the truck and like pushed it off the ground to flip it over.
Crazy.
And they did like tests with it, but they actually did that on I want to say LaSalle Street in Chicago, which is in the middle of the banking district. They flipped this semi truck on a real Chicago street, and they were talking. Chris Corbold is the special effects supervisor, and he was talking about how like they were looking. There's like all these manhole covers, and they were talking like to I guess city guys, and they're like, "What are all these?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, that's just like the lines to all these banks, and they're like." Basically like a lot of important stuff. So they found like 2 spots where it was like possible for them to flip it. So like it wasn't just like let's run the truck down the street and flip it and capture it. It was like we have to nail like the exact spot that we can flip it so that we don't like break something in the city.
And like shut down the cash flow in the city for a day.
Right. That one's incredible. The bus, Nolan said like the bus busting through in that opening sequence was like one of the hardest things to get just because of like the timing of it and the way that was actually inside of an old bank or something. I mean, an old like post office or something like that. And they built like a false wall inside because obviously you can't actually like drive the bus through. So they built a false wall, and like the bus was like connected to this like piston rig that like pushes the bus like through the false wall.
Very convincing.
Yeah, he just talked about like constructing that and like getting the timing right was one of the, like actually the hardest like things to shoot. I think the other thing that stands out was the hospital explosion.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So that's what I think when I think about the special effects in The Dark Knight. I do think like about the semi flip, and I think about the hospital
because of the trigger is the biggest thing for sure. Because it failed, and then he just kind of like played through it because I think they only had like one shot at it, right?
Yeah. So I had heard this. So I had heard this story about how like they had it all ready to go, and they have one shot, and then there's something went wrong, and he like he kept acting through it, and it eventually
Yeah, that's what I've
exploded.
heard.
But actually, I was watching the special effects on the Blu-ray, and maybe this is like them trying to cover up a mistake, which I don't know why they would, because that would be a fun story to tell. But they actually were talking about how Chris Corbold was trying to figure out a way where they could actually have Heath Ledger like walking out of the building in the one shot. And he actually rigged it up and timed it so that there would be this pause so that he could get far enough away.
Okay, but
so
maybe
that, like,
Heath didn't get the message or something?
No, I think he's just like in character, like, what am I going to do when it pauses? Like, because in the context of the movie, like, there's no reason for it to pause. And obviously in the special effects rigging, there's a reason, because you want your actor to get far enough away where he's not going to get too injured or whatever. But like in the story context of like the character in the story, I guess Ledger had just kind of thought through, like, I know it's going to pause. I need to in character figure out a way to like play with that pause, I guess.
I like the first story better. It's a lot more funny.
The first story is a lot funnier and better.
It's incredible. That whole scene, like, it probably couldn't have been done better.
Yeah. So it was like a hospital that they found that was going to get demoed.
Oh, really?
And so they actually blew up a real hospital that was going to get demoed. They demoed it, like they did it in conjunction with the demo crew. So they actually like went through and like pre-sliced huge sections of the building so that they could get it to fall, so that they could demo it the way they needed to demo it,
for sure.
and have like Chris Corbold add the special effects stuff in where
all the gasoline and stuff for the big fireballs and stuff.
Fireballs shooting out the windows and stuff.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they also duplicate the shot in miniature so they could get an aerial of it as well? Like a fake aerial shot? I want to say I saw that a while back too.
Possibly. I didn't really come across that. But they might have done something like that. I know they did. There was like a shot that was like not included in that didn't make the final edit, where there was a camera in the bus. So when he jumps on the bus, there's a camera in the bus, and they showed you in the special features like that shot, but it's just like Joker, like, so like he looks back when like it's not exploding, but other than that, like, he's not looking at the explosion at all. And when he hops on the bus, he's just like sitting there, like you see all the explosion happening like behind him through the bus window, and he's just like sitting there not looking at it, and it's just like, oh man, that would have been a cool like shot too.
Yeah, I've seen that before. That's a good one.
But yeah, 3 weeks of rigging for the
one shot.
Effects.
Jeez.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
There's a lot riding on it. I mean,
for sure,
you can't reshoot it.
Yeah, where are you going to find another hospital to blow up somewhere legitimately?
Yeah, but I mean, Nolan is doing everything he like. It's rare for you to see something in the movie that isn't like, doesn't have its foundation in like a real shot, like no, not CGI, but like real. Like, there's instances in this where like they obviously kind of had to do like some green screen work and stuff like that, but like even like, so like in the hostage sequence that where with the windows like busted out, that was like a real Chicago building that they had found, but they did have to do some like stage CGI green screen work. So like when Batman kicks them out, that's like when he kicks the guy and they all fall out.
Yeah, for sure.
So like the part where he kicks them out is like with a green screen back there, to, that show in the city. But when they actually fall out, they actually had stuntmen fall out of that building in Chicago.
Jeez.
And they had like mattress pads and stuff that they like took out in post, like, but they were doing like some construction on that section of the building, and they got, they somehow convinced that, the city to let them like throw guys out.
Can we just throw people out of your building, please?
Yeah.
It's only like 5 or 6. It'll be fine.
Yeah. But yeah, watching the actual like footage is like crazy. It's just like,
Yeah.
good grief.
Yeah, and
like,
I referenced it earlier, the Lamborghini crash. So you have that written here on your notes
they
too.
really smashed it.
That hurts. Like I'm somewhat of a car guy.
Yeah.
And that just really hurt to see.
Yeah.
I mean, like, not that I'm
the
ever gonna be able
stuntman
to.
was like giddy about it.
I'm sure it's super excited because, like, what do you get
He was
to
like,
intentionally crash a Lamborghini?
yeah, the stuntman was like totally excited, and actually the type of Lambo that it was, I can't think of it starts with the M.
Murcielago, it stands for bat, right?
Yeah, it's Spanish for bat, which is ironic. Maybe purposeful.
No,
I'm not sure.
Definitely on purpose. 100% on purpose.
Yeah.
Isn't it yellow too, like the old school Batman symbol, like that color?
No, I think it was like
or is it silver or black?
It's like silver. Yeah. But yeah. So, anyways, moving on from all the awesome special effects stuff, like, not to put a damper on it, but this movie, so like they did the 7 months of shooting, they're doing the post-production editing, and like this movie released in June or July. It was a summer release in 2008. And like really, like, I remember back in 2008 the news around Ledger dying.
Yeah.
He died in January, which I think it was like 6 months before the movie was set to release.
It's tough.
And yeah, it's just like, it's one of those things where like, I don't know, it's a weird thing that like the relationship we have as like, partakers in entertainment with the people that make that entertainment, and like the kind of like the star quality, like we can forget like that they're like real people, like that deal with like real issues. And so it's this weird thing, but it's also this thing that's like kind of like also brings people together. So it's like this kind of like paradox of like, I don't know, it's just this weird thing in American culture. I think when you have like celebrities, and what, like, how we like both like praise and like lambast celebrities, and then like they something is revealed that is just like a normal human thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like this big thing, and Ledger like overdosed on those prescription pills, and it's this big thing. But he's like obviously just dealing with something, hard in his life. But yeah, Nolan said that he like felt burdened with this like massive sense of responsibility after that to like do his performance right.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah. Like I can't even imagine like to shoot that movie and just like be in the process of like putting together this incredible performance, like editing together
literally centered around this one person.
Yeah. And like to have the actor like pass is just like, I just can't even imagine like what
how
he
old
was
was
dealing
he?
with. Ledger, I want to say he was like 28 to 30, somewhere in there.
27 club guy. 28.
Yeah.
Close.
Yeah.
Jeez, we're both older than him. That's wild to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And his career really was like a burgeoning career. Like he had done Brokeback Mountain, was probably
a Knight's Tale.
Yeah, Knight's Tale. Yeah, that
like
Knight's Tale was pretty popular.
That's the one I remember about with him.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, he had a couple of like big roles.
Oh, and then he had the one that came out posthumously, the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. I'm looking it up right now. I actually remember that one being fairly decent.
Okay. I don't remember that one, but yeah. So I mean, it's just like, it's one of those things where like, man, what would he have done after this? Like, just kind of like thinking about like, anytime there's like an artist of any kind that like dies too young, it's just kind of one of those things where you just kind of like ache for what they could have done, what they could have been, sort of thing. Like what what sort of like cool stuff they could have like accomplished in their career. But
The more recent one that I'm reminded of is Anton Yelchin from the Star Trek series, the newer one. He died like right after the movie too, and he was like 27.
Yeah.
He got remember that. I think he got like crushed by his own car or something, like rolling downhill. It's crazy.
Yeah,
his was a lot more freak than Ledger's, but a lot of sadness around like this talent kind of taken too young, but Ledger especially, just because this movie was so influential to so many people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it will probably like just forever be an iconic performance in American cinema, or really just like cinema in general.
I mean, in its own right, though, like even if he didn't pass, like that performance is incredible. The character's so well written. Like the story is told nearly perfectly, in my opinion.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, that was like that really like put a damper on everything, like, but they really like did well like pushing it forward. This was like this was like a time when like the internet was really like booming. And so like the marketing campaign for this was like really like they were doing all kinds of like new stuff that like had been done. Like I didn't really write anything down, but you can look into it. They were doing like some cool like contests online and stuff like that. But I mean, you never would have guessed that this movie would go on to like open to 158 million, like basically
the budget
in its first week. By the end of its first week, it had like it had added like 30 million onto its budget in profit, and it went on to make hit the billion mark. And for a while, it was second to Titanic all time worldwide.
Yeah, until like Avatar, right?
Well, so like at that point, no, I think Avatar was 2009.
That's what I'm saying. Until Avatar came around, right?
Until Avatar, right. So like for, it was second to Titanic until Avatar. Yeah,
crazy.
That's right. And then I guess still third. After Avatar,
I didn't actually know it made anywhere near that much. Like, I mean, I guess it makes sense now when we're kind of like in retrospective thinking about it. But, that's wild.
And it's one of the reasons why it's so influential is because everyone's like, we want to do what The Dark Knight did and make $1 billion, like, which Marvel's I guess Marvel's way of doing that was to make like 20 movies that lead up to one big final thing where they finally were able to make $1 billion superhero movie. A very, very much roundabout way of doing it from what Nolan did, but yeah, it's incredible, and it actually like changed the Academy Awards too. This movie, so like this movie got 8 Oscar nominations. It didn't win 6. It won 2. It didn't win, but was nominated for cinematography, editing, art direction, makeup, sound mixing, and visual effects. And then it won for sound editing, and then Ledger won for supporting actor posthumously, which I think he would have won either way. I don't think
you'd like to think so for sure.
Yeah, I don't think his passing really had anything to do with him winning. It was just, there's no way he wouldn't have won. If Joaquin Phoenix, wins for Joker, then like, yeah, Heath Ledger, without having died, Heath Ledger wins for this. Either way,
Joker was special, like in its own way.
Sure, yeah,
that's an incredible movie. It's definitely in kind of the upper echelon of my favorite movies of all time. But yeah, it's a very different take than what Ledger had on Joker, and it's a much more like focused just on that story.
Yeah, I have a weird relationship to the Joker movie, just because my theater experience was weird, and like unsettling. and I'm not sure like if in a way that was like intended by the movie makers. Just like basically like I was like there were scenes where things were being done that were like not funny, but like a lot of the theater was like laughing.
Oh
And I was like, I don't think they understand what
no,
this movie is. And so like my theater viewing experience like kind of like messed with me on like my opinion of that movie.
yeah.
I think I would have liked it a lot more if I would have watched it like alone at home.
Yeah, I've only watched it twice. I watched it in the theater with my wife, and then I watched it at home actually like 3 weeks ago, like since it came out.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, 3 times. I watched it once before that, but yeah, I walked out of that one like disturbed. Not even because
Right.
of what you were saying.
Which you should be. You should be disturbed when you walk out. But I was disturbed because the movie was making
because other people weren't disturbed.
yeah, other people were like laughing at things that were actually like really disturbing, and I was like, "What? What is happening? What is happening here?" But anyways, that's a whole aside. But yeah, back to like the Oscar things. Like, so this movie very like famously did not get a Best Picture nomination, and everyone was like very angry about that. And the year after, the next Academy Awards is when they expanded it. And it's because The Dark Knight didn't get nominated for Best Picture, which is really, it's just another incredible thing about this movie. It changes superhero movies. It changes like blockbusters, and it changed like the Academy Awards, like in the way that they nominate for Best Picture. So just all around, like Nolan's just like totally like recreating studio filmmaking basically. And really like his career is like overshadowed by this,
which is a shame.
It's his most acclaimed film. Like it's his change, like I said, changed superhero movies for better or worse. And there's that line in the film about like faith being rewarded, and it makes me it almost feels like that line almost like mirrors like real life of like the studio's faith in Nolan was rewarded, but also like Nolan was rewarded for his faith in the audience to like be able to like deal with the deeper ideas that he was like going for in this movie.
He doesn't really like serve everything on a silver platter in his movies, especially like these, even though they're superhero movies, so I think intrinsically are a bit more easy to understand than in some of his other ones. But he assumes intelligence with his audience, which I really like in directors, and not everyone does that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the other thing that I think Nolan does really well is his casting. Like he really like, I read somewhere he had talked about like the casting for like the 78 Superman was his like inspiration to just like get stars built into his movie, which he kind of started with Batman Begins. I mean, you're putting Christian Bale in, who is like starting like to be more well known, but then you throw in like Morgan Freeman and Michael Caine and like you're getting building this star, and like he just builds on that with this.
Liam Neeson, Kim Watanabe, like
right, yeah. And this one really just kind of builds on that. You Maggie Gyllenhaal gets recast as Rachel, which I think that was just like either Katie Holmes either like didn't want to do another one, or she had a scheduling conflict or something.
Yeah, I forget why. The reason that one kind of threw me off a little bit, because I did like Katie Holmes. Like I think I prefer her performance, but yeah,
it's one of those things. It's like I think they each do like different things better. Like I think Katie Holmes does like the relationship with Bruce a little better, and I think Maggie Gyllenhaal does like the like law side of things a little bit better. Like
kind of like the more running the show, kind of like boss girl type thing.
Right. Yeah. So I think they do different things. Like they both have pros and cons, but
for sure.
Yeah, think people kind of, I've heard people go back and forth on who's better, and I don't really even necessarily have an opinion, but yeah, I mean, obviously, like, you have Michael Caine returning, Gary Oldman, which we didn't even mention about star-studded.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize Gary Oldman at first, by the way. When I first saw the movie, I was like, that's Gary
his
Oldman?
Shtick. That's kind of Gary Oldman's shtick. Is like, I'm going to transform the way I look to.
Well, like in the Harry Potter movies, like he plays Sirius Black, and he looks nothing like Jim Gordon. Crazy.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, he's Winston Churchill in Darkest Hour. Like he's
a chameleon, man.
He is. Yeah. Morgan Freeman, of course, is great. You have some like some of the smaller like villains like Lau and Sal Maroni and those guys. Those actors do really well. Aaron, how do you feel about Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent?
I thought he did really well. He seems, I don't know. I feel like he could have been a little bit more like, and this might have been direction and writing, but like, I feel like they would have made him a little bit more like crazy, like towards the end of it. Like, and he was getting there, and I think he was written really well. But I feel like Aaron Eckhart, he's like maybe a tad bit too macho, and like like I guess the way the older Two-Faces have been portrayed. Have been more like gangster mobster kind of vibes.
Sure, yeah.
More like New York kind of flavor to him, where this guy's very clean cut, like country club, like I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's I think it's very like long. So the Long Halloween comic, the Harvey Dent to Two-Face kind of story arc, I think this pulls very much like influence from, and he is like that, the DA or whatever, there too. I think it's been a while since I've read it, but yeah, I feel like he plays Harvey Dent really well, and then once he becomes Two-Face, it's kind of like, I'm not really sure. And I think maybe part of it is just because the transition happens so quickly.
Yeah.
Like you don't get time to get used to it.
It's crazy as a subplot to try to squeeze. I thought it was crazy as a subplot to squeeze that into the same timeline as the Joker movie. But it does work. I do think he gets too angry and not like, he doesn't like snap quite away. He's just like mad and he's grieving. And that's kind of just what it feels like. It feels like that. It doesn't feel like, oh, he's a villain now.
Yeah,
he just feels like he's like pissed off.
Yeah, and I think part of it is probably like the CGI work is like strange. It's kind of like I don't know that I'm gonna say I don't have an opinion, but if I did have to have an opinion on the CGI face, it would be like, I'm not sure if it's good or not.
Yeah. I think technically speaking, it's good, but if it serves the character well, is a different discussion.
Yeah, I think part of it is because you've had so much of the movie grounded in reality, and like that was so much built into this screenplay and the way the movie was shot, and then all of a sudden you have this guy who has like half of his face burnt off. That's like not realistic at all. It just kind of was like, oh, okay. We're jumping back into like very comic book territory.
It almost would have been better if they just kind of like left it like under bandages and then like brought him back in like a third or a fourth movie.
Yeah, maybe.
Kind of thing.
Or
instead of just doing a hard left to the Bane character. I don't know. That might have been a cool movie too.
Yeah, maybe so. But yeah, I think Aaron Eckhart is very good at Harvey Dent too, because Harvey Dent has this like very like he's kind of got this like I'm like generally a good guy but can kind of be a bit of an a-hole too. Like kind of, I guess, like character to him. But yeah, and Aaron Eckhart pulls that off, I think, pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he's a great actor. I think he was well cast. I can't like off the top of my head think of somebody that would have been immediately better than him. And there
Yeah.
might have been, but I mean, they also may have been searching for a while. And I think where they landed
Yeah.
for the weight of the role that he had, I think served it very well.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, he's good. Michael Caine, always great as Alfred. Christian Bale, correct me if I'm wrong. I've watched Batman Begins not that long ago, obviously for the podcast, and I'm watching Dark Knight, and I'm pretty sure like he really ups the gruff voice for Batman.
It does change. It does change a good bit. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I don't know if
much more.
So he's still my favorite Batman.
Yeah, sure.
But the voice is not necessarily my favorite.
Sure, yeah. It's one of those things that's like you just have to remember like, okay, yeah, I'm in a comic book. It is like very real, but it's still a comic book movie.
Yeah. I will say that Michael Caine, though, there will never be a better Alfred Pennyworth.
No.
Not even like close.
Yeah, I'll say this. I really loved Andy Serkis in the new one. I don't think he gets enough screen time.
He was probably
to really
the best part about those movies.
Yeah. He's really good as Alfred, but yeah, no one is in comparison with Michael Caine.
Yeah, I'm not a Batfleck fan at all.
No, not so. Andy Serkis was in the Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson. He was the.
I'm sorry.
Alfred
Yeah, you are right.
Yeah.
You are right. I'm getting them mixed up.
I can't remember the guy that was.
That statement still stands, though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I really love. I think Serkis is really good, but yeah, it's you.
Yeah, I think I agree. Serkis is a great
Caine.
actor across the board.
Yeah. But really like the man of the hours, Heath Ledger. Like this is Heath Ledger's movie. This is the Joker's movie at the end of the day. Like, and there was like, there's other casting rumors. Like some of them were like Paul Bettany was rumored at one point. Sean Penn was rumored at one point. I think, there was another guy that I recognized.
Paul Bettany's a super interesting choice.
Yeah, he would be in. Adrian Brody, I think.
I could see him.
Yeah. Yeah, he was cast, or he was like rumored at one point, but yeah, in Nolan's mind, like when you kind of look at interviews, in his mind, like he had Heath Ledger in mind the whole time, and so Ledger had actually like talked to Nolan. I think he ended up not auditioning for Batman, but Nolan had talked to him about potentially auditioning, and Ledger was just kind of like, and I think there was like a famous like press conference with Ledger shortly after, like maybe talk show thing, where he basically said like, quote, like, I would never take part in a superhero film. And so, I think Nolan had said like he had seen that interview and like, or heard that quote or something, and been like, okay, I have to get Ledger for the Joker.
Nice.
Like I need that energy, like that resistance to being in a superhero film. I need that energy, like for my Joker role.
And it's like, this movie doesn't feel at all like a superhero movie in the traditional sense, like, which I think was kind of his goal. But like, it just feels like a good narrative movie. Like, that just happens to feature Batman.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a crime action thriller with Batman and the Joker.
Just because
be the characters, yeah. But yeah, he met up with Ledger and had like a couple hour conversation of him, like pitched the story, and Nolan said that like after they talked, Ledger was like totally on board. Like he was like, nice. Okay, and I'm on board. And so he was cast pretty early, and so he went he kind of locked himself up in a hotel room and like practiced voices and mannerisms and stuff to nail down what he was going to do with the performance. And like I said, he had that mood board with those influences. He was keeping a log of things that the Joker might think was funny. Some of the things I saw were like landmines, AIDS, brunch. Um, these are things written in his log. Yeah, just like, yeah, he just like threw himself into this role. He So like the licking lips thing, apparently the prosthetics for the scars kind of went into his mouth a little bit, and so
Okay.
the licking his lips thing was actually like all he was doing was like trying to prevent having to go back to makeup for 20 minutes.
Okay.
And so that just became part of like the mannerism of the Joker.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And Ledger does a lot of stuff. Like, there's a story where Ledger was like, hey, let me apply my own makeup. I want to see how that would be like. And Nolan said, I think there was a quote in one of the books I'm reading where Nolan said, Ledger was like, let's see what we can learn from this. And Nolan was like, well, what we learned is that he's not a very good makeup artist. But he said that Ledger noticed like, oh, I have makeup left over my hands. And so like from then on, that was a detail that they had was like, if
Nice.
you look closely, you can see like makeup residue on his hands, because they were like, oh yeah, that's a detail that we missed that we learned from this. So just like tons of stuff that's just like Ledger's creative mind, and the way like Nolan worked with him was just like incredible. There's a ton of little stories like that. The abduction, like torture sequences that are broadcasts where the Joker's broadcasting. I think there's like 2 of those little sequences in the movie. And Nolan let him like operate the camera and direct those sequences. Like Nolan wasn't directing those. He gave like full control over the direction of that to Ledger, in character as the Joker, which is incredible. Like,
I can't
especially
imagine
for someone like Nolan that's so like detailed and precise with how he wants things done, to like give over control. It shows a lot of trust.
and it definitely wouldn't have come out even close to the same way, I don't think.
No,
to have that kind of like found footage, like super grimy, dirty, distorted, gross kind of take.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, just like the Joker, like the Joker's persona is in this movie, is just incredible. A lot of it comes from Ledger, but I mean, the way that Nolan and Goyer kind of conceived of the Joker has a lot to do with it too. Goyer is quoted saying like that they were just talking about how most iterations of the Joker in film he's not really scary, and they wanted a Joker that was actually scary. And there are some very like intense, frightening sequences of the Joker. Like he obviously has his jokes and his like dark humor, that do get laughs. Like, you laugh at it, some of his jokes in this movie. But there's sequences where he is actually like very menacing. Which like
absolutely.
if you go watch like the Jack Nicholson Joker, which is also pretty iconic, like he's not really scary. He's crazy.
Yeah, he's a little unsettling, but
yeah, he's not like, you don't watch that and be like, this is like intense, scary.
The thing that did it for me, and this is part of the marketing too. I forget if they showed this in the trailers, but the scene where he comes in with the chest full of grenades and stuff, when he says, "I'm going to make this pencil disappear," and then he slams the dude's head on the pencil, and then the pencil is not there anymore. And like, where the heck the pencil go? And then you realize it went through the guy's eye.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm like, and I think there was a piece of marketing material that was an X-ray scan with a skull, like the cross section of a skull with a pencil through it. And I was like,
awesome.
Oh my gosh. Like that's when I realized like, oh my goodness, this dude is like bent.
He's nuts
in the worst way.
Yeah, he's nuts. But like, in a way, I mean, so like to contrast like the complete opposite of like how you should never do the Joker, which is like Jared Leto's take on the Joker. It's like the complete opposite. Like
I wanted him to be good at it so bad because I do like him as an actor. But
yeah, it's like, ooh, I have an idea. Let me lay in a circle of my knives because that's what the twisted Joker would do. It's like, no, like the Joker doesn't have time to like be laying on his knives. Like he's out there like scheming and
he's
like,
obsessing over
Joker
things.
stuff. Yeah. But anyway, Nolan, this is a quote from Nolan. He said, the Joker is what I am afraid of more than anything, more than any of the villains these days particularly. I think the Joker represents the id in all of this. The id being like the basest, most instinctual part of like our being, in psychology. That's what it is. He is like, and another thing Nolan said is like the Joker is like the engine of the movie. Like he's what propels everything forward. He's just everything about his persona is crazy. Feister, the DP, said that he's got his camera up close, right up on Ledger's face in a lot of scenes. And he said like watching him in those close quarters was like he was busting blood vessels in his head. And another thing he said was that it was like a seance where the medium takes on another person and then is so completely drained. Like just the intensity that he put into this character to make him legitimately like menacing and like kind of the sort of guy the sort of character where you're like, I have no idea what this guy's going to do next. And that's frightening, you know?
Very, very unpredictable character. And he didn't feel like he was written that way either. It just kind of felt like they were just recording this crazy person.
Right. Yeah. And so like, it's the mixture of, that's what I was saying. Like, it's the mixture of what Ledger brings to it, which is that chaotic energy. That's what Nolan wanted. And that's why he cast Ledger, because he knew he could do it. But then it's also like the writing too adds to that. You have like, he gives the two different origin stories when he's like threatening people, and just that idea. So the first time you get it, you're like, oh yeah, this is crazy. Like on a first watch, and then like he starts up telling another origin story, and you're like, wait a second, like this dude is just coming up with this like demented stuff like on the spot. Like
and they go into the details of like they can't find his name, no prints, no nothing, no dental records.
Yeah, he's just and that Nolan talks about how like he just kind of appears, like maybe he was just has always been there sort of thing. And like he says he's like a force of nature. And he kind of saw him like Nolan's kind of says like he kind of viewed him kind of as like the shark in Jaws, where he's just as much a plot device as a character. He's like this force of nature that the other characters are like forced to respond to.
Yeah, like they don't have a choice.
Right. And so he like, he just, and that's why he moves the movie forward, because the whole movie is just like, we don't know what the Joker's going to do next. And then he does what he's going to do next. And that's what moves things forward. And so there is this like chaotic feeling to it all.
They can't be proactive. They have to only be reactionary to him until they can finally like confront him. Yeah.
And that was like a question I was thinking about before I was watching the movie, was like, so, because I've seen it obviously several times before. And, I was just thinking about, so like, is the Joker supposed to be like something representing like kind of something like base and terrible that's kind of in everyone? Or is he kind of like representing this force of nature that like affects or influences everyone? And it seems like it's more the latter.
Yeah, I would say so. Like he's an edge case for sure. And I think the part in the movie that sums it up the best is Alfred's monologue to Bruce in the bunker, where he's talking about the guy that was throwing away rubies the size of tangerines away just because some men want to just watch the world burn. They don't care about money.
Right. And it is this like idea of like the chaos of everything. Like there is a degree to which like, the way it functions in real life or the parallel is just kind of like the not knowing what might happen in your life next that could throw everything for a loop, that chaos that is then really just kind of the nature of our limited like foresight and knowledge as human beings. Like we don't know exactly what's going to happen next ever. And so that's kind of like what the Joker represents, but like to an amplified degree of like the chaos of life. And so like, the way he functions is sort of like, he says he's chaos, and there's like the line where he says to Harvey Dent becoming Two-Face, like, do I look like a man with a plan? And, which is kind of an ironic line to me, because I'm like, no, you don't. And you don't act like a man with a plan, but you definitely have a plan. But everything is like, I read somewhere a line that I was like, oh yeah, that's good. Is that he doesn't so much strategize plans as conceive of like lethal jokes. Like everything is just jokes, these big jokes for him of like, how can I throw everything for a loop?
Yeah, and like he does that quote where he's like a dog chasing after a car. Like he doesn't know what he would do with it if he caught it. He just does. I just do. Yeah. And so it's like maybe he doesn't have plans as much as he has just random goals of like destruction and mayhem and killing people and doing whatever that kind of satiates his desire to do whatever he wants at any given time. And this one just happens to be burning Gotham to the ground.
Right. Yeah. And he, I think one of his biggest functions in the movie is that he kind of probes the limits. He probes the limits of both like the ethics of Batman and the ethics of like the people of Gotham, which all culminates with like those final sequences. So you get like, you get the final sequence with, him and Batman facing each other while like the fairy sequence is going on. And that's what he's pushing everything to. The Joker is, can I like push everyone to the edge of like their lines of ethics? I mean, that's what he does with the guy that's like trying to out Bruce's Batman, like the accountant guy.
Yeah, for sure.
He's like, let me show how like when you push everyone to the complete edge of their ethical lines, how they'll cross those lines. And he does it with Batman. That's one of the things that I was thinking about with Batman in this movie, because while it is very much a Joker film, at the end it goes back to Batman. I think Nolan is a quote that I wrote down from Nolan is, he said it's the Joker's film for so much of the movie because he's such an electric sort of presence, and with his performance he's such a motor for that film, but at the end Batman takes it back. Bruce takes it back to himself. And I think that's true, and it comes down to like, what is the motivating factor for Batman at this point?
Especially after Rachel's death, right?
Yeah, so I mean, you have in Batman Begins, like his parents' death is, and the fear and the grief and anger is like the motivating factor. And so, what is it here? And I think even before Rachel's death, it's this this duality of his identity like taking its toll. So like he's dealing with like, is there an end to this, or is everything just going to keep escalating if I continue in this?
Yeah, and it's such a poetic way that they tell that, because he sees Harvey Dent as that answer.
Right.
And then when Rachel gets taken away, that the Harvey option is no longer a thing because he goes crazy.
Yeah.
And so it's all back on him again.
Yeah, and even before Rachel dies, he sees her like shifting affections.
Mm-hmm.
So he's losing her before he really loses her.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is another like just joke by the Joker of telling him, switching the addresses,
Yeah.
so that he saves Dent, which to me is like another indication that like he has a plan, like he has an overarching plan. But yeah, just the idea that Batman is like so burdened by the power and the responsibility that this escalation of things has like brought to him. And then Dent, like there's also like we were talking about, you also have this like side story about like the rise and fall of Harvey Dent. Going on like simultaneously with this story of like the Joker Batman dichotomy. I don't know, like we've talked a little bit about that. It's kind of, I think when you boil it down, really the question for that story arc was Two-Face in him the whole time.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when you watch, so there's like the few sequences where like Bruce and Dent interact with each other, and they like kind of talk about the Batman, like especially at that dinner.
Yeah.
And you kind of get the feeling that Dent is sort of like jealous of how Batman can operate.
Yeah, but I think that's a sentiment that's kind of shared across most of like the authority of Gotham City, that they all see him, or everybody besides Jim Gordon and his unit see him as a vigilante that's like kind of going against what they've set up and kind of ruining things for them and going against the grain and probably making the city a worse place instead of a better place. But then, go ahead.
I was going to say, but then Dent is like, even before he becomes Two-Face and like Rachel dies and stuff, like he's already starting to try to be Batman. Like there's the scene where he's like getting ready to like torture this like mad guy, and Batman shows up and he's like, "You're not getting anything out of this guy. He's crazy."
Yeah. Even way before that, when he first meets Jim Gordon and he asked Gordon about his nickname. So like that kind of leads me to believe it's like, well, he might just be a jerk instead of like being crazy. Like he's like, okay, like he does what he needs to like kind of get results in his line of work. But I don't think that they give you any indication that he has the Two-Face character within him at that point, which I don't think he would have until he actually loses Rachel. But it's such a weird thing because like he seems so worried about having Rachel in the first place, and because she's so kind of standoffish whenever he asks her about like their relationship and furthering it and all that kind of stuff, because secretly, I mean, obviously she's still tied to Bruce. But to kind of see that kind of like jealousy kind of form for the Batman or for Bruce in general, with Rachel and Dent, that whole like kind of like pseudo love triangle thing is super interesting.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't think that necessarily like he would have become Two-Face without the death of Rachel. Like that's a crucial kind of plot point, which is a whole nother thing with Nolan of like killing off the wives and love interests in his movies. But you know, it's the irony is like he has a very like loving family relationship with his wife that is part of like that produces all his movies with him. It's just like this ironic thing of like, and yet he's like killing off all the wives in his movies. Very strange. But yeah, I mean, the Dent thing, I think it's interesting, but I think really like Dent functions more as, or his like story arc becoming Two-Face functions more as like a way that the Joker, like it, I guess it functions toward the Batman Joker dichotomy part of the story more than it functions just on its own right. Because at the end of the day, that's like his, what does he say? Like an ace in the bag or an ace in the sleeve or whatever. You know, the fairy thing failed, his little social experiment, but his social experiment with Dent, that, you know, Batman was unaware of, actually was a success.
What have you done?
Yeah. What have you done? Where is she?
Let her go. Very poor choice of words. Best part of the movie.
Yeah. And that's like one of those like jokes that actually like is funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that, you know, talking about like the Joker Batman dichotomy, it's that chaos, like turning civilization back to its baser instincts, that like is kind of the idea with Joker. And the Batman part of this is like Bruce and Batman, like as Batman, wondering like, have I enabled this? Has like me escalating everything with my vigilantism brought this about? And you know, Joker has the line, like he has the line, "You complete me," which makes you wonder, like, has the Joker watched Jerry Maguire? And is Tom Cruise a part of the Christopher Nolan Batman universe?
That's his in when Katie Holmes left. He had to kind of replace her somehow, right?
Yeah. But yeah, you know, and so, you know, Bruce, and this is the interesting part of like Batman's like arc through this, is he's, you know, Joker's plan to like push to the edge of ethics, like not only works with like the citizens of Gotham, but it's like working with Batman. You know, you have the interrogation scene where he's like just like beating on the Joker, which is like very unlike and against kind of like what he normally does. And like so it's just these choices he's making where he's like doing the wrong thing but for the right reason, and like bearing the weight of that, and like trying not to lose himself, as the Joker's keeps pushing him.
Yeah, you kind of see that theme of obsession between both of them kind of like taking place, especially when he goes to Fox and creates like the giant sonar network thing,
right?
And I mean, and even Fox confronts that. It's like, hey, like, as long as this is at Wayne Enterprises, I'm not going to be. And he kind of asked the question, you know, at what cost? And I think that's like the question that you are kind of left with at the end of the movie. It's like, we're moving forward. We're you know, we're putting criminals away. We're doing all these things that are, you know, supposed to be good, but at what cost? I think is the question you're left with. And that's like, I think that's what leads into The Dark Knight Rises, is that question, like, at what cost are these supposedly good things that we're accomplishing? You know, but yeah, there's I think the other interesting thing about this movie are like the political aspects of it, which there was a lot of talk around when it came out. You know, it's written against the backdrop of like the Bush War on Terror, very much like, and it's like going on at this time. Well, yeah, Joker felt like a domestic terrorist. I mean, that's kind of what he was doing. It was just inciting riots and terror and all this kinds of stuff, and telling people to like kill this dude or else he blows up a hospital, and all these crazy things that are just there to just incite madness.
Yeah, and you know, it's the Joker's, you know, being like destructive and causing like catastrophes, but then like Batman having like overreaching reactions to that. And so like there's very much like, you can see the influence in the writing, really. I think it's one of those things, like when you talk to guys like writing like Nolan, they're like, well, you know, we're not trying to be relevant to the times. but like at the same time, these are the things on everyone's minds, and they're on our minds while we're writing. So it's not like, oh, we're trying to make a political statement, but it's just like the natural.
Yeah, it's not allegorical, but it just kind of happens because that's what inspiration he has in the ethos to like pull from.
Right, exactly. And there's a ton of like things that he's tackling that are like just in the American like zeitgeist and conversation, like at this time, like the surveillance state and civil liberties.
Big Brother.
How to regard people standing as figureheads, which we're still trying to figure out. But yeah, and like I said, like the Joker is basically like a stand-in for like shaking down like modern American ethics. And
I would say
really
just human ethics, not just American ethics, right?
Yeah. I guess like I guess I was just saying that because just thinking about like the political atmosphere in America when this was made. But yeah, for sure, like human ethics too. Just like what lines are you willing to cross, that sort of thing. Because like really like with Batman, there is a very fine line between him and the insane criminals he's dealing with.
Yeah.
And so it would be very easy to cross that line. But yeah, one of the things I was thinking about was the line where Joker says, madness is like gravity. All it takes is one little push. And I was just thinking about, man, that is kind of a little bit too true in today's like political atmosphere. All it takes is like saying one thing that may or may not be true about a certain group of people, and your side, like,
the tiniest provocation.
Yeah, gets all up in arms about this thing that may or may not even be true, but the right figurehead said it, and so that's on the right side. And so yeah, I do think that there's a lot of like politics of the time when this was made, but also stuff that unfortunately like carries over to today, like that.
For sure.
That idea. But yeah, Nolan, very like, if you look at like back on the conversation around the movie when it released, there was actually like people on both sides kind of claiming the movie as being like for their point of view, which is hilarious for one. And Nolan actually said he felt like both sides like claiming his movie was actually a win.
There you go.
But it really is politically ambiguous. Like Nolan again trusts his audience. He's like, I'm not going to answer these questions for you. It's up to you to decide what are the right things happening in the movie and what are the wrong things. Like you as the viewer have to figure that out on your own. Like I'm not just going to spoon feed it to you. I kind of lean toward that, like a lot of the stuff that's going on is wrong. Like I think the question like of at what cost, I think the answer is like a lot of what's going on is at too great of a cost. Just because like really in the end of the I think the film does speak to it like a little bit less like directly, in that like Batman totally like changes his tactic at the end, like and so like that should tell you like, oh yeah, the cost is too great. And
I mean like the whole like character of Batman, like, well, yes, he doesn't kill anybody. I mean, he's causing millions of dollars of damage to the city and like being completely reckless, and like like you said, by the end of it, he's doing things that are like super unethical and kind of just trying to exact his revenge and not just bring balance and justice to the city like his original like kind of motive is.
Right. Yeah. And I do think like, so the movie ends and he's riding off, and it's the whole line of like the hero I always mix it up. The hero that he's maybe the hero that Gotham needs right now, but not the one that it deserves, or vice versa. That line has always been confusing to me because I'm like, wait, what's better, to a hero that you deserve or that you need? I've always been like, I don't really get what they're trying to say there.
No, I think it's like maybe they're trying to say like Gotham is like too far gone, and so like he shouldn't bother. But he's who Gotham actually needs, but they don't deserve his generosity, and
they don't.
I guess like at some level kindness for like trying to fight the injustices in Gotham.
Yeah. I guess that is it. But I feel like, man, they could have written that line a little bit better, more clearly.
It sounds like a cliche.
Yeah. And then, he's kind of like becoming the, I do like the Dent line that's reused here of like, either,
you die a hero.
Yeah. Die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah.
Which is that really is a great line.
That's probably the best line in the entire trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a way better line than the need deserve heroes line. And I think it is like, very much encapsulates like the story arc of like Bruce / Batman in this film, of like, he's done, like, he hasn't even really been doing this for like a year.
Well, it's him and Dent, right? Long. They're paralleled in that. I mean, Dent literally, and Batman's on his way to being that. He's on his way to becoming a villain, and then Dent actually does become a villain. Right.
Yeah, and maybe it's just that idea that like when you ride that line for too long, like it's inevitable that you're going to cross it. And some people just are going to cross it way sooner than others. Like Dent didn't cross the line like way sooner than Batman did. But it just that idea that like, hey, maybe you shouldn't ride the line. Maybe you should, steer clear of it altogether, sort of thing. But I think just taking a final thought away from the movie, because the two fairies thing is a big thing in the movie, and like the tension building is really well done in that. But also just like, I think the idea that I was like taking away from it as I was watching with like today's eyes and today's like climate in America, and it probably like was something that was relevant then too, but just the idea that like you have these two fairies with these like opposing, not just like, I mean, they're people of different ilk, like they're criminals from a lower strata, and these people that are like well-to-do trying to get out of the city, or like at least like middle class.
Just I think just average citizens.
Just average citizens. And they should be very different, and they should have very different ideologies about life. But they don't. At the end of the day, they decide not to treat each other that way. And I think that was like one of my like, I guess like takeaways from this was just like opposing ideologies willing to simply just not destroy the other. Like, you would think the ethic to take away should be like that they're actually kind to each other. But just like in today's political climate, just like not trying to destroy the other is a step forward.
Which, and that was kind of like ultimately like Joker's defeat, right? I mean, I guess like psychologically, was that like Batman? He even says it. It's like, this just goes to show that not everyone is as ugly and whatever deep down as you are.
Yeah, and he does pull the whole Dent thing, but then Batman too, like his solution for that is, I'm going to like sacrifice my own reputation and whatever for Dent, which I've heard some people like nitpicking of like, why couldn't they pin the crimes on the Joker or whatever? And I was like, well, that wouldn't be as interesting as a story. So there's the answer for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like, I don't know. I just think about like our two main political sides today. Just like there's a lot of unwillingness to just have civil discourse, or just like even simply not like lambast someone who has a different opinion than you. And I don't know. I wrote down in my notes, let's toss the detonators and treat each other as fellow humans. And yeah, that was kind of like my corny takeaway line from that whole sequence is, toss the detonators out of the window. Like, we don't have to like destroy each other to make our points. Like, you can make your point and opinion wise, like by just like treating other people as fellow human beings and talking through issues like civilly. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's still something that's relevant today. That's like probably Nolan had like maybe no intention of communicating, but something that kind of I saw thinking about that sequence with the two fairies. But yeah, I don't know. Did you have any like final takeaways or just like things you were thinking about?
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Great
like,
movie.
just even stepping back from all of this, like, minutia that we've been talking about, like, it's just like a really enjoyable movie to watch.
Oh yeah. It's a long movie, but it's one of those movies that like you don't feel the length of it, which
Nolan's very
is a
good at
good
that.
thing. Yeah. Yeah. Where would you, I mean, I would assume this is your favorite Nolan movie.
It is,
because it's one of your favorites all time.
It is my all-time favorite movie. I don't know if I said that earlier in the podcast, but it is.
Yeah.
It is yet to be dethroned, and I can't foresee a future where it will be. So yeah, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 for me, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm also, like I said, a huge Nolan fan, so a lot of his movies are on my like top 10 list. And not that I've made like a formal one or anything like that, but
sure,
just kind of in my headspace right now, I can probably think of one or two others that are up there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, like I had said at the beginning, when I think of The Dark Knight, I'm like, Houston loves this movie. But I remember there's once where like you just like, we had like, I think we went to a concert in Dallas. Was that a John Mark McMillan concert we went to or something like that? Like way back. I mean, that was probably like 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And you just like had The Dark Knight playing on your phone on the drive back.
Probably.
Like you were driving and you just had it playing.
Yeah, just like so I can listen to it.
Yeah, I have like a distinct memory of that.
I'm sorry I put you through that then.
No, I mean, I love the movie too. I wasn't mad about it. I just have like that memory.
It's like, let's check out this new album. Nah, let's watch this movie.
No, let's listen to The Dark Knight.
Goodness.
Oh man. Which I think it's funny because I think you can listen to it and not watch it and like picture it and enjoy it that way. But I also think like you could probably watch a lot of the scenes with no sound at all and it still be like really cool and incredible to watch. Which is, I don't know, that's fun. But yeah, for me, this is like, so I have like, I think 6 Nolan movies that are ranked that I would put like at 4.5 to 5 stars. And this is one of them, but right now I have it as like the 6th. So, just rewatching through everything, I think I've moved like Memento ahead of it. Just because like Memento is so like, Nolan is so like precise and like everything is so like, just like on the dot with Memento, with the way it's like written and structured. And it's a little bit more like focused in like what he's doing with like memory and grief in it. This is like a way more expansive movie, obviously. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's, like I always say, like ratings and rankings are like subjective and really don't mean anything objectively. But it's fun to talk about to me. Yeah. so I have it sitting at like 6, but like I said, still like
Mhm.
4.5 stars, or if you want to say like 9 out of 10, for me.
Nice.
And yeah, like just like frames of this movie like burned in your mind, like Joker with his head sticking out the police
Mhm.
car, Batman standing with like the bluish like hazy background with the fires being put out behind him.
Mhm.
It like sticks out in my mind. Yeah, just like it's just an incredible movie all around. But yeah, that's I think we've pretty much
We went
hit
pretty in
all we're
depth with
gonna
that one.
hit
Yeah.
on the Dark Knight. So we're obviously gonna talk about Inception next week. So looking forward to that. I've actually already recorded that episode, and it's a very good one. And so I've been recording these a little bit out of order in true like Christopher Nolan fashion. So
There you go.
yeah. But yeah, looking forward to that. But we're gonna have a movie draft coming up that I'm excited about. And before that, we're going to take a quick break. So we will see you back in just a second. Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on the Establishing Shot today. We hope you're enjoying the episode so far, and we hope you will stick around for the segments we have coming up after this quick break. But during this break, I wanted to tell you how you can get more involved with the Establishing Shot podcast. There are several ways you can do this. The main way you can do it is by going to establishingshotpod.com, our website where you can find all sorts of information like episodes with the show notes on there, information about our guests for each episode. You can find reviews there, and there's a page where you can actually leave a review on the website if you want to. You can see all the platforms where the podcast is available, like Apple, Spotify, all the major podcast platforms, and even a link to our YouTube page where you can see a video version of the podcast. So please go to the website. And the place I want to highlight there is our donate page, which has information about our Establishing Shot family. This is a way that you can subscribe to the podcast to support all the efforts and the stuff that goes into making this podcast good and making it better than it even is now. We have different tiers that you can subscribe to, starting at $5. And what this will do is you'll be able to support the podcast, help me make it better, and also at the same time, you'll get early and ad-free episodes. You'll get access to our Discord server where you can join in and just kind of talking about movies with a community that loves film. And so we would love to have you in there. And then the higher up in the tiers you go, the more you get. Even things like chats and video chats that we'll do every once in a while where we get to talk about in more detail stuff that we're talking about on the podcast. So I hope you'll subscribe to that. Choose a tier that fits your budget, and I would love for you to support the podcast in that way. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is where you can find us on social media. You can find me personally on Twitter at @DEliPrice, and you can also follow me on Letterboxd. Letterboxd is kind of like a social media for movie reviews, so you can read my reviews there, and you can find me there at just Eli Price, no spaces or anything. So I'm on Twitter and Letterboxd. You can find the podcast on all the social platforms as well, such as Twitter at eShotPod, and then on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok at Establishing Shot Pod. So make sure to follow us so you don't miss anything. If you have any questions or comments about the episode or about the podcast, you can always email us at establishingshotpod@gmail.com. And the very last thing I want to do before you get back into the episode today is just ask you to please go to Spotify and Apple and leave some ratings and reviews. That really helps the visibility of the podcast and gets it in more people's podcast feeds. And so we hope you will do that for us, and we would greatly appreciate it. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode, and I will see you next time on the Establishing Shot podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Establishing Shot. I'm Eli Price here with Houston Dragna. Just had a great conversation on The Dark Knight. Man, I'm just like looking at the movie poster with the Joker standing there, and man, just incredible. Anyways, we are. I don't really have much as far as movie news goes for this episode. I know the weekend this is releasing is the same weekend that the Taylor Swift Eras Tour is coming to theaters. So
To
I know
theaters?
Houston's got his I
I
know
didn't know
Houston's
about
got his ticket already pre-purchased for that.
I mean, yeah, I'm so excited for that.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm sure some people do, but yeah, it's apparently coming to theaters.
A lot of Swifties out there.
Taylor Swift Eras Tour. You can't buy the $2,000 ticket to a concert, so pay $15 and go to the theater. There
you go.
Yeah.
Big screen.
But yeah, like I said, not much as far as movie news goes or releases for this weekend. So we're gonna jump right into the movie draft, and along with the Joker, we are doing a villains movie draft. Choosing movie villains. I think I don't remember if we talked about this, but I think we're gonna like have the Joker in this movie set aside as like he's just the best, and so we'll just like crown him king.
Yeah, so he can't be chosen. Yeah, I figured as much.
So when I post when I post the picks on social media for people to vote on, I'll just like say Joker king. Like I'll have a slide where like Joker's like has a little crown on, like he's the best. We all know it. Moving on, let's try to make this harder on ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because really, I think if one of us picks the Joker, which would be you, because you have the first pick, then you just automatically win. It's not as fun that way.
Yeah, we can't make it too easy.
Yeah, exactly. If you never listened to one of the movie drafts before, is basically I like to describe it as picking the best kickball team in the schoolyard. So you're gonna have you're gonna have your best players that you want to get on your team, but also like your best friends that like you want your best friend to be on your team too. He might not be the best kickball player, but it's your best buddy. You gotta bring him on the team. So that's kind of how our movie drafts go. I'm going to put up a poll after we finish drafting and see who ended up with the best team, basically. So it's leave it up to the people. We're the two fairies in this scenario, and the people get to decide which one blows up. Man, I
don't know where you're going with that. That's good.
Every once in a while I'll tell a really corny joke live on air that lands. Most of them don't.
Congratulations.
So you have the first pick. We are picking movie villains. I haven't really put any stipulations on what counts for a movie villain. We didn't talk about it, so it's just up to us to define what that means, but I think it's pretty cut and dry.
Well, yeah, we're not going to decide who wins. So if we pick really crazy, like arbitrary decisions on what a villain is, then the audience will know what that is, right?
Exactly. They'll know you're cheating.
Yeah.
So Houston's going to have the first pick. We're going to pick 5 movie villains each. So I guess we can kind of name the movie and then obviously the villain in the movie that we're choosing it for. But you've got the first pick.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'm excited about this one. I'm going to choose Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards.
Great pick. He was in my top few for sure.
Yeah. He's just
Christoph Waltz. Perfect.
Yeah, it was
Love it.
such a well played role, and that's even besides the point. But like, just a guy he's a Nazi. He's excited about being a Nazi. He finds joy in like killing people and finding Jews and all this terrible, 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 awful stuff. And he like laughs about it, and he's like kind of like has that weird psychotic string to him.
He's got a little bit of Joker energy to him.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like the big smile and like all of his lines and his like kind of super oddly cheery voice the whole movie.
Oh yeah.
Very disturbing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Great villain too.
Yeah. Yeah, he was definitely in my top picks. I am going to. I'm glad you took. It's one of those things where like I hate to lose that as an option, but also like it'll make like my first couple of picks easier.
There you go. Yeah, I'm curious to see what you have to say because I'm sure your list is like twice as long as mine.
I have way too many. But yeah, I'm gonna go with one that's like both a like one of those that's like it'll get some votes, but also like is just like near and dear to my heart. And I kind of did a social experiment with my family last week, talking about I was saying, oh, we're going to do a villains draft, and I was like, what is the most who is the most like iconic, not the most, but one of the most like iconic movie villains in pop culture. So not just like a movie villain, a really good one, but one that's like very prominent in pop culture. And like I was surprised that it wasn't like didn't come to mind sooner for my family than it did. But yeah, I'm gonna pick Darth Vader from.
Saw it coming a mile away.
I'm gonna go with from The Empire Strikes Back because that's my favorite.
Specifically. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to pick a movie specifically, and I think I think I love him in Empire Strikes Back. I mean, he's great in all of them, and you can't really pick. You can't really pick him with Return of the Jedi because he kind of makes his swing back in killing the Emperor there. So
yeah,
I'm gonna go with Darth Vader. I mean, one of the most iconic villains of all time.
Yeah, you'll get a bunch of points with the audience for that one.
Yeah. But also just like I love that first trilogy so much. It's so good.
Nice. Yeah. No, I do as well. My confession with Star Wars though is the original 3, like 4, 5, and 6. They blur together in my mind so often that I forget what scene comes from what movie.
That's fair. Yeah.
Just because like when I first saw them, I was so little, and so like. I just like I remember like maybe like bits and pieces. Like I'll watch like an hour of it when I was younger, and then like fall asleep, and then like my dad's watching the next one the next day or something like that. And so it's been a while since I've like sat down and watched them back to back to back.
Yeah,
but I digress.
Yeah, you've got your second pick.
Yeah,
what are you going to go with?
If you're going to hit me with Darth Vader, I think I have to compete. I want to put some more interesting ones in there that are kind of more just for me. But I think just for the points, I think I've got to go with Thanos.
Yeah, you'll definitely get. Do you want to pick a specific movie? I mean, obviously, it's probably going to be Infinity War or Endgame.
It's probably Endgame just because you kind of see his like I guess like pseudo humanity more, and like that kind of give more of his reason. Like, and I think that's what makes a great villain, and what kind of informed a lot of my choices is like. They were once normal, or like that you can at least see, you can somewhat sympathize with their cause.
Yeah,
and that's what makes a great villain. It's just they act on all those urges and all those things that you're like, oh wait, no, you can only think that. Don't actually do it.
Yeah, for sure. Which is ironic, I guess. Since we talk so much about the Joker and how like we don't know what his origin is or like what his motivations are. So it's just crazy how like you can have those two opposite ends of like great movie villains.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I'm going to go my second pick. I'm going to go with the more Joker end of things, with a villain that you don't have any idea where he comes from, what his motivations are. And I'm going to go with Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men.
He's on my list too.
Javier Bardem. I think he is like really one of the best. Like, so
just out of left field.
It would be hard for me to choose between him and Hans from Inglourious Bastards.
Mm-hmm.
It's very close. I don't know.
Yeah.
But since you took him off the board, it made it much easier for me. So yeah, I'm going with Anton Chigurh. Yeah, I mean, he's making you flip the coin to decide if you're going to live or die,
and then
in a much more menacing and better fashion than even Harvey Dent. So
yeah, if you haven't seen No Country for Old Men, I mean, good gracious, that's an incredible movie.
Yes,
disturbing,
yes.
But incredible.
Yeah, very.
Okay, yeah. So pick number 3 for me. I think I'm gonna do one more popular one, and then I'm gonna pick some that my last 2 are gonna be for me. So my last popular one. Oh, this is a tough choice.
It gets hard.
It does, man. Jeez. Okay. Let's go with Green Goblin from the Willem Dafoe Green Goblin from Spider-Man.
Right. Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The first Sam Raimi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Such a good villain. Has like both ends of the spectrum where it's like, I guess like the Green Goblin from the chemical, it kind of comes out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But then like, was it Harry Osborn?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Is a very human, real person that has like real aspirations and stuff, but like, I don't know, he's kind of like a little bit obsessed about this whole Green Goblin thing. Or just like what is it, like just like a body synthesis kind of material thing.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I think if we didn't have the Heath Ledger Joker, I think Defoe's Green Goblin would be my favorite like superhero movie villain.
He's good. It was tough between that and Doc Ock for me, but I think Green Goblin takes it.
Doc Ock is great too, but Defoe just brings that like comic book energy, like like even in the No Way Home,
where he comes back.
Where they bring him back in the kind of multiverse thing. He just like takes control of that movie. Even like, I mean,
Willem Dafoe as an actor does that no matter what he's in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This is where it gets hard for me too, because kind of like my favorite ones are all like my top choices are off the board. So it's just kind of like, okay, where do I go next? I'm going to, and like you said, I like to take some like popular and then some from me, which luckily I got a couple that are popular, but also like some of my favorites. So that helps. I'm going to, do I go this direction already or wait? Okay. I think I know what I'm going to do. I am going to pick, I guess this one is probably popular too, but maybe like people maybe don't think of it when they think of movie villains, but he's like he's a villain that like isn't necessarily like one of those that has, like you said, a good backstory, or even like one like Chigurh or Joker, where they're like just like chaos kind of villain, but he's just the villain that keeps popping up. And I'm going to go with Hugo Weaving's Agent Smith in The Matrix.
Okay. He was a consideration for me, not a pick though.
He's just, it's just a fun character, like and like one that like sticks in my mind. Like I can just hear him saying like Mr. Anderson. like anytime I see someone with the name Anderson, like that's what say in my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a really fun villain in my opinion. Yeah.
Very cool.
All right.
So since we're on the Nolan series right now, I had to give some love to some of his characters besides the Joker. And this is like a genuine one that I really think is like a truly crazy, awesome villain is Mal from Inception.
Okay.
And so
that's a take.
Yeah. So
I get. Yeah.
Do you get why I'm saying that she's a villain?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's because she is trying to draw in, I forget the actual what's DiCaprio's character's name in the movie.
Cobb.
Yeah, Cobb. She's trying to draw in Cobb to this like state of madness that she's entered into because she delved too deep into like the kind of Inception world and all these dreamscapes and stuff, and then she eventually she killed herself because of it, right? Because she could distinguish between realism and reality. And so she's even a projection. So like the Mal that you get throughout the movie for the most part is like a projection of his. Mm. And so like it's almost like he's his own villain. Yeah. But that concept as a character I think is really cool. And I thought a long time about that one. I was like, does this really count? And I'm going to go with yes. But if that loses me points with the crowd, so be it.
So be it. I think it's a bit of a hot take, but I do see where you're coming from with it. I would have never thought of that. But yeah, I like it. I like that idea that she's a villain, and it makes it more interesting because she is a projection of his own mind.
Yeah. So if she's not the villain, what would you consider? Is there like a true antagonist in that movie even? Like besides himself?
Like if like even if you say Mal as the projection, because obviously she's not a villain. She wasn't a villain like as her real self, but like the projection of Mal, like he is his own enemy because she is a projection. So yeah, I guess it's that conflicted man kind of thing that Nolan, kind of deals with in all of his movies, where the protagonist is kind of his own worst enemy in a sense.
I'll leave it on the table.
Yeah, I like it. I'm not gonna veto it or anything. I think it's an interesting choice. Okay, so this is my man. We're already 4 in.
I think if you really want to, we can push to 7 if you want.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. I'm gonna go ahead and pick one that is probably one for me. I don't know how popular this movie is because I know a lot of people that haven't seen it. But I'm gonna pick Samuel L. Jackson's Mr. Glass, aka Elijah Price from Unbreakable, shares my name, which is kind of weird.
Wow. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that was my next pick. You jerk.
Which I think it's maybe a little bit of a spoiler to pick him. So my bad. I should have said spoiler alert. But
you didn't say what he did.
Yeah, I didn't say what he did, but it is kind of like the twist.
It is a twist.
The Shyamalan twist that he's the villain. But I mean, people know that there's the movie Glass at this point. It's been long enough. You should have seen it by now. But yeah, I love Unbreakable has always been a favorite of mine.
I haven't.
And it's a superhero. It's a superhero movie.
Yeah, it technically is. I haven't seen Glass, nor have I seen a Dragonfly. Wasn't that like the kind of spiritual precursor to that series or whatever?
Oh, I don't know.
Aren't they like kind of like lumped in together or something? I know they're like not directly related though.
Split is.
That's what I meant. Split, not Dragonfly. That's.
Yeah. Split is pretty good, and I thought Glass was pretty good. Glass didn't get very good like critical reception, but I enjoyed it personally.
It came out so much later than Unbreakable, though, right?
Yeah, it did.
It was like almost 10 years, I think.
And it incorporates the the Split character, James McAvoy's character,
Gotcha.
into that one too. So you have his character and Bruce Willis's character, and yeah, I thought it was a fun movie. But
Nice.
Yep, Mr. Glass.
Well, thanks for taking my next pick.
You're welcome.
That's a good one. That's a really, really good one. All right. So if you're going to pick Mr. Glass, I feel like I got to throw in another heavy hitter now because you took that. I'm going to go. I got two good ones right here. I'm going to go with Scar from The Lion King.
Nice. You made another choice easy for me.
Okay, good.
But I'll get to that probably with my next pick.
And I don't think that one needs any.
Scar's a great.
I don't think he needs any explanation.
Yeah, be prepared. That's it.
It's because he has a great singing voice. That's why I picked him.
Yeah.
Not many on here with a great singing voice.
Yeah. I like to picture Scar with a beak coming out of his mouth, talking.
Yes.
But yeah, Scar is. I mean, he's a great villain. He really is.
Who played Scar? Jeremy Irons. Is that right?
Let's see. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Really great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, you made my next pick easy. I'm gonna go with probably like I was another question I posed to like my family, just a fun thought experiment, is when you think Disney villain, who's the first one that comes to your mind? And I got several answers. Like Scar, Scar was said. I don't know if anyone's Scar was their first one that came to mind, but he was one of the first, and it would have been one of the first for me. But I think the villain that I think of first comes with her own very recognizable theme, and I'm going with Cruella de Vil.
Okay.
From 101 Dalmatians.
I wasn't 100% sure where you were going with the female villain. I thought you were going to go Maleficent at first.
Yeah, Maleficent is the one that most people will say. When you think of a Disney villain,
mm-hmm.
I think a couple of people, my family said Maleficent. But Maleficent doesn't have her own theme song, so
it's fair.
Cruella de Vil is automatically better, in my opinion.
That's the reason.
Yeah. And she's just kind of great. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the Emma Stone movie that came out, Cruella.
Nah, me neither.
It gives like a origin story to a character that like doesn't need an origin story, and like actually makes the character confusing when you get the origin story that makes you supposed to be empathetic with her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but she's just trying to like kill puppies. So why?
I don't get it either.
Yeah,
I didn't really care for that movie. I did watch it though.
Yeah. Anyways, Cruella de Vil is a fantastic villain, and she's got a cool car, and she's got her own theme song.
She does.
So that's all you need to know.
Those are true things. All right. So I need to ask you now, are we going to 7 or are we stopping it at 5? What do you think?
Do you think you got 2 more? Because I'll tell you this. If we keep going, I'm gonna pick some like just very personal ones that I kind of doubt you'll pick.
Yeah, I got a couple more. Wait, so this would be my 5th pick currently?
Yeah.
I'm about to do my 5th pick.
I do have like another like more like popular one that I could go with, but I do have some like personal ones too. Yeah, we can do 7.
Okay, cool.
I'm down.
If that's the case, before you get rid of it, I think this might be another one that's up there, pretty high on the list. And it's going to be Sauron from Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
It's a chess game now.
I guess you got to go with Return of the King, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good one. And honestly, like, so I've been making like little letterbox lists so I can like organize these, for my drafts. And, for some reason I forgot to, or maybe it's just like, oh, that's what it is. So like usually I'll put my favorite ones up toward the top, and I had just forgot to move it up there. So yeah. Oh well.
Boom.
But yeah, Sauron, great one. That's gonna get some votes.
Yeah, just for even if they don't know his name, the fact that I'm putting the Lord of the Rings on my list, I think it'll get some brownie points there, or some Limbo spread points.
All right. So like I said, there was one more that would be like a very popular one. Probably. And since you picked Sauron, I think I've got to go this direction. Because that was a huge oversight for me. And I'm going to go with Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger from Black Panther.
Good one.
Who is my favorite, personal favorite Marvel MCU villain.
Okay.
So Marvel. So like I can't say Marvel villain because I do like Defoe's Green Goblin more. Like I said, but yeah, Killmonger is my favorite.
But for MCU specifically, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Great performance too.
Yeah, great performance. Really like cool, like empathetic, like we've been talking about villain. Yeah, Black Panther, Killmonger. All right, this is your last pick.
Is it? No, this is 6, right?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nope. This is 7. This is the last one.
All right. Wait. Can I go through my list again? So I did Hans Landa, Thanos, Green Goblin.
Yep.
Mal. And Scar, and then
Sauron.
Okay. Oh dang. All right. Cool. Well, I have a few more to choose from then. I got to go for an interesting one. I can't go like super mainstream with this one.
Oh yeah, I'm picking something for me.
I'm going to go with, and I think you might appreciate this one. I'm going to go with Terrence Fletcher, the teacher from Whiplash.
Love it. Yeah. I had seen that when I was like doing some research of like, oh, what are some interesting villains?
Same.
And I had seen that and I was like, oh, I like that take. That's good.
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting one because it's like, it is technically like a fictional movie. So like they kind of like over personify the characters a bit. And he is like just far. And like I did some music program study at UL in Lafayette. And like, not to say that anybody there is near that bad, but like I kind of like, I can sympathize with the musician thing because I was in the music program of like the late night rehearsals and like trying to pass your exams and trying out for bands that you don't make and just kind of being under that stress. And so I can empathize with Miles. What's the actor's name? The main guy. Now that you asked me,
from
Top Gun as well.
Miles Teller.
Yeah. I can sympathize with Miles Teller a lot more because of having that kind of life experience. And so that one is a very personal one to me, even though I didn't have any professors near that mean. But super duper well done performance there, which I think he got an Oscar for, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Also played J. Jonah Jameson in the first Spider-Man movies.
There you go.
Boom.
Tie-ins.
Full circle.
Tie-ins all around. Okay. This is my last pick, and I'm scrolling. I have a huge list. And so I'm scrolling through here, and I'm like, okay, I have 2 that I'm deciding from that are very, very different. One is definitely not going to win me any votes. Because I doubt many people have seen it. Actually, I have 3. 2 of them will not win me any votes.
Well,
one of them might.
I got to know what the other ones are once you reveal your actual pick.
Yeah, one of them might win me votes. But I've already picked one villain based on the theme song. So I'm not gonna pick another theme song one and go with
Nickelback doesn't count as a villain.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about doing Bogus Bunsen Bean from Fantastic Mr. Fox, just because I love that song gets stuck in my head.
Okay.
Bogus Bunsen Bean.
Yeah. It's been a minute since I've seen that movie.
Yeah, and I just did the Wes Anderson series, so
yeah.
It's more fresh on my. And me and my wife, which you know, Robin, we watch it we started a tradition of watching it every Thanksgiving,
Nice.
which
It's
is
a great
fun.
movie.
So I'm gonna go. There's two I'm choosing from. I think I'm gonna go with the absolutely creepiest of creepy options, and I'm going to go with Max Schreck's version of Count Orlok, aka Count Dracula, in the 1922 silent movie Nosferatu.
Okay.
If you've never seen this movie, it is incredible the amount of like actual real horror and creepiness that the director F.W. Murnau is able to like capture. Like you look at still images and you're like, oh, this movie's probably like corny, and then you watch it and it's like it's incredibly creepy and like and if you watch it like disconnected from the film, I could see how like you'd be like, oh, the way he moves is like corny. But like when you watch it in the atmosphere of the whole movie, it is haunting, like the performance. And so, yeah, it's not going to win me any votes, but maybe it'll get some people during spooky season to watch the 1922 Nosferatu for the first time.
Yeah, I've definitely seen cells from this because I think at one point he was turned into a meme.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But no, I've never seen the actual movie.
Yeah, the stills are like, you're like, oh, this is a very corny, but it is absolutely completely haunting and creepy. Nice. So yeah, that's kind of just a personal favorite pick.
Right on.
That's not going to win me any votes. The other one was, which we can do some honorable mentions.
Yeah, sure.
The other one was Robert Mitchum's Harry Powell from The Night of the Hunter, 1955 black and white film. It's this guy that plays this kind of like traveling preacher that's actually a serial killer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he kind of poses as a preacher. And he's a serial killer and he's looking for this one of his ex inmates like cash that he has stowed away. Mm-hmm. It's a very good, interesting movie.
Nice.
Yeah. Others, I mean, I didn't pick any like I guess Nosferatu is horror, so I got a horror pick in there, but you have your like iconic horror villains like Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street, Mike Myers from Halloween,
Jason Voorhees,
Jason.
Not super, but very one-dimensional. Like that's the only bad thing about horror movies is most of the villains are very one-dimensional. Mm-hmm. They're just like an evil spirit from something, and they just live to kill, and that's it. They're scary, but they're not very compelling most of the time.
Yeah. If I had to pick one, it would probably be Freddy, because I think there's some interesting stuff going on with him, like emotionally and whatnot. Like where does he stem from, and then like to the way like Mike Myers is just totally like kind of funny, like how he just appears around corners. But at least with Freddy, like he exists in the dream space, so it's totally like plausible within the structure of how things work. But,
yeah, that one does work a bit better. This wasn't even on my list, and I don't really like ascribe to myself to be like a huge fan of the series. But if we're going just outside of movies, Vecna from Stranger Things 4 is a pretty good one.
Yeah, really good. I enjoyed that story arc in that last season. It's very good.
On my list, go ahead.
One we really missed was Voldemort.
yeah, that's true.
Ralph Fiennes' performance is very good.
Yeah, I highly agree. He's on my top list of actors for sure. Especially like he can do that, and then he can go do like Grand Budapest Hotel.
Right.
So good. so good. The biggest one on my list that I hadn't said was probably Jack Torrance from The Shining.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Very creepy character.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like that's another one of those where I saw that on a bunch of lists, and I was like, I don't immediately think of him as a villain, because he's sort of like the main character of the movie, in a sense.
Yeah, I guess so. But
and
like
kind
he becomes that later though. Like
he
the kind of like
becomes-
the
yeah.
shift. It shifts his
Right.
attention to the
To her.
female character. I forget her name right now, but
I do too.
but it shifts to her, and then he becomes the villain and starts becoming an axe murderer.
Right.
And then who else do I have on? I had a Gore from Thor: Love and Thunder. I actually really
Yes.
I loved that character.
Bill is like going all out.
What was that?
It's great. Bill is just going all out with that character.
Yeah.
I love it.
But yeah, Christian Bale's a fantastic actor, and then that character has a really good backstory, or at least a fairly compelling one. It's a little far-fetched, but
Yeah.
I mean, everything in
Right.
the MCU is now.
Yeah. Well, that whole movie is like totally just like balls to the wall, like
I love it.
like going crazy, and I like it for that reason.
Mhm.
Like, I think a lot of Marvel movies try to like ride the line of being funny and serious at the same time, and this movie is just like totally like not taking itself seriously at all, which I kind of
Yeah, for like
appreciate.
90% of it, for sure.
Right. Yeah. Another big one we didn't draft that I had thought about was Hannibal Lecter
Mhm.
in Silence of the Lambs. Anthony Hopkins, like, iconic performance there.
Yep. That's a big one.
There's a lot of good Disney ones that are fun.
Ursula.
I'm not going to go through all of them, but yeah, Ursula's a good one. Who else was I thinking of? Jafar.
Yep, Jafar is a great one.
You've got there's a lot of pretty good ones in like the Bond series and Mission Impossible movies, fun villains in those.
Hans Gruber from Die Hard.
Yep, Hans Gruber. I thought about Hans. I thought about drafting him, but I didn't end up going with him. Some less conventional ones. Well, one more conventional one is the Shark in Jaws. Could totally pick him.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. But yeah, some more unconventional ones for me would be like Western. There's some good Western villains too, like the Liberty Valance and the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is really good. The Angel Eyes and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Is really good.
I know that's a classic one. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's fair. I only watched it recently, like in the past year.
There are gigantic gaps in my, like, I need to watch this movie realm.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying to like slowly like watch some more like classic Westerns to catch up with those.
Caesar and Gladiator is a big one for me.
That. Yeah. The Joaquin Phoenix Commodus. Yeah,
that's
very good.
Yeah, I guess he's effectively Caesar, but yeah, I guess it's not his character's name.
Another one that I thought of that was just more of would have been just a fun pick was the Mama Fratelli and the Goonies.
Yeah. Oh man, you know what I should have picked was Dr. Evil from Austin Powers.
I did think about Dr. Evil.
That should have been on my list. That's like legitimately one of my favorites.
Honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Evil. We didn't do that's I was trying to think of like some comedies.
Yeah.
To pick villains from, and Dr. Evil was one I had thought of but forgot to put on my list. I don't know that I would have picked him, but yeah, I do think there's some fun. Another big one that I probably should have taken that I think is really fun is Marvin Harry from Home Alone.
Yeah. That's a good one. The Wet
really
Bandits.
Fun. Yeah.
Rob Lowe from Wayne's World.
Sticky Bandits. Yeah. There's a lot of villains are fun, which is a strange thing to say, but
what's the
in movies,
the teacher from Matilda would have also been a good one.
Yeah, that would. It's been so long since I've seen that I like. It's one of those that like I know I've watched it before, but like can't really like mark off as like Yeah, I've seen that because I don't remember
Yeah.
from it. Like I know the story and all.
I don't even know if she was like the
yeah.
main villain. I guess like was like Danny DeVito. I guess was like one of the main antagonists in that one too.
Maybe I don't. Like I said, I don't even
Yeah.
remember honestly. It's
Anyway,
been so long.
but that's my list exhausted, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot more. I might link my list, my letterbox list in the show notes if people want to see my whole list. It's probably not like all of them, but it's just like ones I could think of.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, I'll read these off and then we'll move on. Houston ended up with Hans from Inglourious Bastards, Thanos from Avengers Endgame, the Green Goblin from Spider-Man, Maul from Inception, Scar from The Lion King, Sauron from Return of the King, and remind me of the Whiplash character's name?
Oh, Terrence Fletcher.
Yeah, Terrence Fletcher from Whiplash, the J.K. Simmons.
Yes.
Yeah, and I ended up with Darth Vader from Empire Strikes Back, Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men, Agent Smith from The Matrix, Mr. Glass, aka Elijah Price from Unbreakable, Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians, Killmonger from Black Panther, and Count Orlok from Nosferatu. So, yeah.
Hearing it
Good
out
list.
loud, I think you're going to win, but we'll see.
I don't know. Yeah. So you have some heavy, like having Thanos and Sauron and Scar, like those are heavy hitters. I have heavy hitters too, though. So it'll just come down to like people's personal preference.
Yeah. And I think we both have like one throwaway on there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I think a lot of people like love Inception, but a lot of people are gonna be like, really, Mal from Inception? And mine, they're gonna be like, Nosferatu, what is that?
Yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, maybe we'll get some people thinking. Yeah, did you just wrapping things up, did you happen to have a recommendation of the week? If you wing it, it's okay, because I wing it all the time.
Yeah. Just because I was super late to the party and I didn't get to watch it in theaters, Across the Spider-Verse was incredible.
Oh yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
I want to see that again, like on my home screen where I can like pay. It was like overwhelming in theaters.
I regret not being able to do that at least once, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. There's so much going on in that movie that it's like, okay, I need to watch it again.
Mm-hmm. Incredible.
Yeah, really incredible. Could end up being like my favorite of the year. We'll see. But yeah, my recommendation of the week, I decided to keep it Batman and go with one of the comic book stories that was an influence for this. And I mentioned it earlier, The Long Halloween. It's one of my favorite, just like overall comic book stories that I've read. I haven't read like a ton of them, but I've read enough to like have some favorites, if that makes sense. And yeah, Long Halloween is a great story arc. It's not like the same story arc as like The Dark Knight or anything. It was just kind of like they took some influences from it. But yeah, it's a great story. If you don't want to read the comic, but would watch the animated movie version, there is like a 2-part feature that, you know, all the DC stuff is on Max, so you can watch it on Max. And it's pretty well done. Like the voice acting and everything is really well done for it. And it's a lot of those like animated versions of the stories are pretty much like 95% sticking to the comic. So yeah, it's really good. Long Halloween, great story. Go read it, or at least maybe watch the animated version.
Nice.
Yeah. That's it. Did you want to plug some places where people can find you, find your work, or just
Yeah, for
interact
sure.
with
I
you on
appreciate
socials?
that. So I am a photographer, videographer, and graphic designer. I'm currently promoting a lot of my like wedding business stuff. So if that's of interest to you, or a friend or a family member, you can find me at houstondragna.com for all my wedding stuff. I am on Instagram at the Houston Dragna, and on Facebook as Houston Dragna Photography. But I think if you type in like facebook.com/the Houston Dragna, it still pulls up there. But yeah, that's about it. But I also do like commercial work too, so like not just wedding stuff, product photography, brand stuff, lifestyle, portraits, headshots, kind of the whole gamut.
Yeah, and I've seen his work.
You've hired me for some work.
I have, and it's great. Some great family pictures that I will cherish forever. And so you can get some great wedding photos and video that you can cherish forever. Do you just do photography for weddings?
No, I do both. So
you do video too?
I do both. I offer discounts whenever you book both with me, and then if you do actually end up booking both, I hire a pretty sweet, talented team to come out with me.
Yeah, sweet. And if the Joker shows up, that's totally on the Joker. You never know when he might show up.
Never.
Yeah, it's not a part of the package deal, but you never know when chaos might show up and impose itself on your wedding party. So
yeah, absolutely, it's a concern we all have.
But yeah, that's all we have for today. Thanks so much, Houston, for coming on and talking for a long time with me about The Dark Knight. And I hope everyone enjoyed the show. Again, we're going to talk Inception next week. Looking forward to that conversation. But until then, I've been Eli Price for Houston Dragna. I said Dragna. For Houston Dragna. You've been listening to The Establishing Shot. We'll see you next time.
Later.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Establishing Shot today. We hope you enjoyed the episode and got a lot out of it. Make sure before you go to like and subscribe on all your podcast platforms, and especially on Spotify and Apple. If you could leave a rating and review, that would greatly help the visibility of the podcast, and I would greatly appreciate it. Again, if you go to establishingshotpod.com, you can find out all you need to know about the show, where to find us on the social media platforms, where to find us podcast-wise, YouTube, and you can even leave a voicemail there on the website on the right side of your screen. So click that if you want to give a comment or ask a question about the show. Just feel free to leave a voicemail. We'd be happy to feature that on the show. And also, if you just want to email rather than leave a voicemail, you can email us at establishingshotpod@gmail.com. And we would be happy to answer your question there or feature a question or comment on the show if it pertains to the episodes. So please do that. And we would love for you to join the Establishing Shot family. You can, again, find where to do that on the donate page at establishingshotpod.com. We hope you have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.